The Victorian mansion at 1847 Maple Grove has stood proudly for over 150 years. Its elaborate gingerbread trim and soaring turrets a testament to an era when craftsmanship meant everything. I first fell in love with the house when I was just a graduate student in architectural preservation, never dreaming I would one day call it home, or that I would have to fight my own mother-in-law to keep it. The real estate listing that popped up on my phone in my Tokyo hotel room felt like a physical blow. Stunning Victorian manor, priced to sell quickly. The photos showcased every loving detail I'd restored over the past 3 years. The hand-carved mahogany staircase I'd spent 6 months rehabilitating. The original stained glass windows I'd had specially restored by artisans in Prague. The period-accurate wallpaper I'd sourced from a small factory in England that still used 19th-century printing techniques. My mother-in-law Margaret Henderson's name as the listing agent made my jaw clench. She'd been trying to get her hands on this property since before I married her son, seeing it as her family's birthright rather than the historical treasure I knew it to be. "You don't deserve this house." Her words from our last argument still rang in my ears. "A property like this should stay in the right family's hands. You're just a preservation enthusiast playing at restoration." If she only knew. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over the number that would change everything. Margaret was about to learn that her daughter-in-law wasn't just a restoration expert. I was now the head commissioner of the State Real Estate Licensing Board. I'm Olivia Parker, and my journey to this moment began long before I met my husband James or his socially ambitious mother. Growing up as the daughter of 2 passionate history teachers, I spent my childhood weekends exploring historic homes and learning about architectural preservation. My parents may not have been wealthy, but they gave me something far more valuable, an appreciation for history and the importance of protecting our architectural heritage. When they died in a car accident during my sophomore year of college, I channeled my grief into my studies, graduating summa cum laude with a double major in architecture and historic preservation. My thesis on adaptive reuse of Victorian-era buildings won national recognition and led to my first job with the State Historic Preservation Office. That's where I learned that saving historic buildings isn't just about understanding architecture. It's about navigating complex regulations, building community support, and sometimes fighting powerful developers who see these treasures as nothing more than profit opportunities. I worked my way up through the ranks, earning certifications in real estate law and historic preservation, building a reputation as someone who could balance preservation with practical use. By 30, I had my own restoration consulting firm and had saved dozens of historic properties from demolition or inappropriate development. My work caught the attention of the State Real Estate Licensing Board, where I began serving as an advisor on historic property issues. What I didn't know then was that this expertise would one day be crucial in protecting my own home from my mother-in-law's schemes. Our connection was immediate and deep. James shared my passion for historical architecture and preservation, and we spent hours discussing the importance of maintaining our city's architectural heritage. What I didn't know then was that his mother, Margaret, had very different ideas about what constituted proper use of historic properties. Margaret Henderson was old money, the kind that believed certain addresses should belong to certain families. She'd made her fortune in real estate development, primarily by buying historic properties and turning them into luxury condos. When James introduced me as his girlfriend, her first question wasn't about my background or interests. It was about my family's social standing. "Parker?" she'd said, her perfectly penciled eyebrows arching. "I don't recall any Parkers in our circle. What did you say your parents do?" "They were schoolteachers," I replied, watching her face fall. "They passed away when I was in college." That was strike one. Strike two came when she learned I worked in historic home restoration rather than proper real estate development. But the final strike, the one that would fuel years of resentment, came when I bought the Henderson family's ancestral home right out from under her. The Victorian mansion on Maple Grove had been in James's father's family for generations. When his father died, the property passed to his aunt, who decided to sell it rather than maintain such a large house. Margaret had assumed she'd be able to buy it, planning to subdivide the property into luxury townhouses. What she hadn't counted on was my expertise in historic preservation law and my connections in the architectural community. I'd been working for years to protect historically significant properties from exactly the kind of development she specialized in. When I learned about her plans for the house, I knew I had to act. The bidding war was fierce, but in the end, my restoration companies offer won out, partly because I included a detailed preservation plan that would maintain the house's historical integrity. Margaret was livid, but there was nothing she could do. The sale was legal, and the property was mine. James supported my decision completely. He'd grown up visiting that house, and the thought of it being carved up into condos horrified him. We decided to make it our home, and I spent 2 years carefully restoring it to its original glory while adding modern amenities that didn't compromise its historical character. We were married in the house's grand ballroom, surrounded by the restored mahogany paneling and original crystal chandeliers. Margaret attended, of course, but her wedding gift, a set of architectural plans for modernizing the house, made her feelings clear. For 3 years, she tried every trick she could think of to gain control of the property. She reported imaginary code violations to the city. She attempted to have the house's historical designation revoked. She even tried to convince James that the house was too big for us and that we should sell it to her and move into one of her luxury developments. Nothing worked. Each attempt only strengthened my resolve to protect the house and its history. What Margaret didn't know was that while she was plotting to get her hands on my property, I was building a reputation in the historic preservation and real estate communities. My restoration projects won awards. I served on preservation boards and real estate committees. I earned advanced certifications in both historic preservation and real estate law. And 3 months ago, I was appointed as head commissioner of the State Real Estate Licensing Board, a fact I hadn't yet shared with my mother-in-law. When this latest business trip to Tokyo came up, a 3-week consultation on preserving traditional Japanese architecture, Margaret apparently saw her opportunity. She must have thought that with me out of the country and James busy with a magazine deadline, she could quickly sell the house before anyone could stop her. What she didn't count on was the network of preservation enthusiasts and real estate professionals who kept an eye on historic property listings. Within hours of her posting the listing, I'd received multiple messages alerting me to the situation. Now, sitting in my hotel room halfway around the world, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew would change everything. State Real Estate Licensing Board, Commissioner Parker's office. My assistant answered. "Sarah, it's Olivia. I need you to pull up a listing for 1847 Maple Grove and check the authorization documentation." There was a pause as Sarah accessed the files. "Interesting," she said. "The listing agent is Margaret Henderson, but I'm not seeing any seller's authorization forms in the system. That's a serious violation." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "Please schedule an emergency board review for tomorrow morning. I'll attend virtually from Tokyo." Next, I called James. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with anger. "Liv, I just saw what my mother did. I've already left 3 messages for her to call me back. Has she responded?" "No, but she posted on social media about a exciting new property opportunity coming to market. She's already scheduling viewings for tomorrow." I smiled grimly. "Well, she's certainly going to have an interesting morning. Don't tell her about my position with the licensing board. Let her walk into this one on her own." The next morning, I logged into the emergency board meeting from my hotel room. The other commissioners were already online, reviewing the documentation Sarah had prepared. At exactly 9 a.m., Margaret swept into the boardroom in person, probably expecting to defend her actions to a group of faceless bureaucrats. The look on her face when she saw me on the main screen was priceless. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson," I said pleasantly. "I'm Commissioner Parker, head of the State Real Estate Licensing Board. We've called this emergency meeting to discuss some serious concerns about your recent listing of 1847 Maple Grove." Margaret's composed facade cracked slightly. "Olivia, what is this?" "That's Commissioner Parker in this context, Mrs. Henderson. Now, can you please explain why you listed a property for sale without the owner's authorization?" Well, James mentioned they were thinking of selling, and I simply wanted to test the market." "Did you have written authorization from the property owners?" "Not exactly, but as James's mother." "So you fraudulently listed a property without owner authorization, a direct violation of state real estate law and the board's ethical guidelines?" Margaret's face had gone from pink to white. "Now see here, this is a family matter." "No, Mrs. Henderson, this is a legal matter. You used your real estate license to commit fraud. That's grounds for immediate suspension, possibly permanent revocation. The other commissioners nodded in agreement. Margaret looked around the room desperately, probably hoping to find a sympathetic face among her peers. Instead, she found people who had watched her bend rules and exploit properties for years. I move to immediately suspend Margaret Henderson's real estate license pending a full investigation, one commissioner stated. Seconded. Another quickly added. This is ridiculous, Margaret burst out. That house belongs in the Henderson family. She doesn't deserve it. She's not even from the right background. Mrs. Henderson, I interrupted, my voice steel sharp. You're just making this worse. The board takes discrimination based on social background very seriously. The vote was unanimous. Margaret's license was suspended immediately, and all her current listings were frozen pending review. As a final blow, the board initiated an investigation into her past dealings, particularly those involving historic properties. This meeting is adjourned, I announced. Mrs. Henderson, you'll be receiving formal notification of these actions in writing. Please have your attorney contact the board's legal department with any questions. As the other commissioners filed out, Margaret remained standing in the middle of the room, staring at my image on the screen. You planned this, she accused. You've been working against me all along. No, Margaret, I replied calmly. I've been working to protect historic properties and uphold real estate laws. You're the one who chose to break those laws. The fact that I'm in a position to stop you is just karmic justice. The aftermath was swift and extensive. The investigation into Margaret's past dealings revealed multiple instances of questionable practices, particularly regarding historic properties. Several of her previous developments were found to have violated preservation codes, resulting in hefty fines. James fully supported the board's actions, though it created some awkward family dynamics. She brought this on herself, he said when Margaret tried to guilt him into intervening on her behalf. Maybe this will finally teach her that she can't just take whatever she wants. Margaret's social standing, which she'd valued so highly, took a major hit. The same society circles she'd used to look down on me now whispered about her ethical violations and suspended license. Several of her luxury development projects lost investors when the investigation became public. As for our house, I continued my restoration work, focusing on preserving not just the building but its history. We opened it for historical society tours, sharing its beauty with people who truly appreciated it. The irony wasn't lost on anyone when the house won a preservation award, with the ceremony held in the same ballroom where Margaret had once sneered at my obsession with old things. 1 year later, Margaret requested a meeting. She'd completed the board's required ethics courses and wanted to apply for reinstatement of her license. As head commissioner, I had to recuse myself from the vote, but I did agree to meet with her privately first. She looked older, more subdued. The designer suits and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a simpler, more natural appearance. I've done a lot of thinking, she began, about properties, about history, about family. And, I prompted when she paused. And I was wrong, not just about the listing, about everything. I saw properties as commodities to be exploited. You saw them as pieces of history to be preserved. I was so focused on status and appearances that I couldn't see the real value in what you were doing. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Margaret, it was revolutionary. The board will consider your reinstatement application on its merits, I said carefully, but personally, I appreciate your reflection on this. Margaret nodded. The house, you've done amazing things with it, things I never would have considered. Would you be willing to show me some of the restoration work sometime? It was a small olive branch, but I took it. I'd like that. Today, 2 years later, the situation has evolved in ways none of us could have predicted. Margaret's license was eventually reinstated, but with restrictions on historic properties. To everyone's surprise, she's turned her focus to renovating and preserving historic commercial buildings, sometimes even consulting with me on preservation techniques. She's still Margaret. She still makes comments about my common background sometimes, and she hasn't completely given up her social climbing, but she's learned to respect boundaries, both professional and personal. And when our first child was born last year, she was genuinely touched that we chose to raise our family in the house she'd once tried to take away. The Victorian on Maple Grove stands as a testament to the power of preservation, not just of buildings, but of principles. Its restored walls now echo with new family memories, while its historical character remains protected for future generations. And if anyone asks about the modern security system and detailed property documentation we maintain, well, some lessons you only need to learn once.
My earliest recollections are like old film stills, colored in shades of melancholic blue. My father was a mere silhouette in an old, faded photograph hidden in a dusty album, leaving us before I turned 6. My mother, Mary, became the overcast sky looming above our cramped apartment. One moment, she would be furiously cleaning the kitchen floor, muttering about a new beginning. The next, she would pull me into a tight embrace that left me gasping for air. These rare, breath-stealing hugs were the only tokens of love I yearned for. Mostly, I was just a quiet shadow following her around. She moved through our home, her face marked by deep lines of worry that seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. At times, when the creases on her forehead deepened and her expression grew tense, she would leave me with Mrs. Megan downstairs. When Mom returned, the air around us felt charged with an electric tension. She would casually tousle my hair with a sigh, a gesture that felt more obligatory than affectionate. Occasionally, a brief smile would light up her face, offering a fleeting glimpse of the warmth I so desperately sought. Then came John, a man whose eyes crinkled when he laughed, bringing a gentle calm to the stormy whirl of our lives. He treated me with a kindness that felt alien in our often tense home. After a particularly embarrassing day at school, thanks to Kathleen and her clique, I found solace in John's presence, tears clouding my vision. Why do they always pick on me? I mumbled into his shirt. The familiar ache of loneliness tightened around my chest. Kneeling before me, he looked into my eyes with a concern that was new to me. They pick on you because they're insecure, he whispered, wiping away a stray tear. They want to feel powerful by making others feel small. His words were a soothing balm to my bruised spirit, igniting a flicker of hope that perhaps things were looking up. But in my world, hope was a delicate butterfly, easily crushed. Then Betty arrived, a tiny, joyful bundle with eyes mirroring my mother's. Suddenly, I was no longer the center of attention. All the warmth and affection seemed to evaporate, replaced by a chilling indifference as my mother's focus shifted entirely to Betty, leaving me to fend for myself in the bewildering world of growing up. At 15, braces and a frizzy halo of hair framing my face, a knot of insecurity as big as Texas tightened in my stomach. It was also when my mother's negative attitude towards me flourished into a relentless barrage of criticism. On school picture day, she took the day off to perfect Betty's pigtails and choose the sparkliest dress for her. When it was my turn, she sighed, rummaging through my closet with frustration. Ugh, nothing decent in here, she complained. On the day of the photos, Betty shone like a little princess, while I stood out like a crumpled dandelion next to her radiant sunflower. My mother cooed over Betty's photo, giving me nothing more than a cursory glance and a dismissive grunt. John, bless his heart, tried to remain a positive presence in my life. He would sometimes take me shopping, helping me choose clothes that actually suited and flattered me. After a particularly tough day with my mother, I found comfort in his embrace, the need for comfort overwhelming. Dad. The word slipped out before I could catch it. He froze, a moment suspended in time, reflecting the complicated web of emotions and relationships that defined my family. Then, a look of pain flashed across John's face. Just then, my mom appeared in the doorway, her eyes ablaze with fury. You have one father, Carol, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. And trust me, he's all you deserve. Her harsh words hit me like a physical blow. John, feeling the mounting tension, clumsily ruffled my hair, trying to lighten the mood. Look, it's okay, he mumbled. It's not okay, I managed to say, my voice choked with tears as they started to spill over. Betty, ever observant, watched the drama unfold with a barely concealed smirk. Carol's been bad again, Daddy. She took my candy without asking. Life at 17 was a mishmash of first crushes, awkward school dances, and a perpetual knot of anxiety in my stomach. In our home, navigating the dating scene was particularly treacherous. Mom had a unique talent for undermining any potential romance before it could even take off. For example, there was Kevin, tall, humorous, with a smile that could thaw the coldest heart. After weeks of nervous texts and shy glances, I summoned the courage to ask him out. He said yes, and I was elated, though that joy was quickly overshadowed by the dread of him meeting my mother. The night Kevin came over, Mom was in rare form. She dragged out Betty's bedtime story to an excruciating length. When Kevin finally arrived, nervous but endearing, Mom greeted him with a smile that was all form and no warmth. "Carol never cleans her room," she declared offhandedly, as though she was commenting on the weather. "You might find socks and pizza boxes under that mountain of clothes." My face burned with embarrassment. Kevin offered a nervous chuckle, but the silence that followed was painfully awkward. The rest of the evening spiraled into a disaster. Mom threw out snide remarks about my weight, my taste in music, and even my choice of college. By the end of the night, Kevin couldn't escape fast enough, leaving me feeling utterly deflated. This pattern repeated with each new guy I dared to bring home. Mom transformed into a maestro of backhanded compliments and subtle put-downs. My self-esteem plummeted, and any potential relationship evaporated faster than a sparkler in a rainstorm. By 19, amidst the chaos of college applications and nervous farewells, I was determined to escape the stifling atmosphere of my childhood. Senior year was my personal mission control, meticulously planning my escape into Betty's world beyond my mother's reach. I poured my soul into each college application, seeing every acceptance letter as a small victory, chipping away at the fortress of negativity my mother had built around me. Naturally, she didn't make it easy. When I announced my acceptance to a university across the state, her response was a masterpiece of passive aggression. "Oh, Carol," she sighed, shaking her head melodramatically. "So far away. How will we ever see each other?" It was a question heavy with guilt, but I was no longer susceptible to her manipulations. "We can video chat, Mom," I responded firmly. "And there are these things called airplanes." John, my constant pillar of support, was overjoyed for me. "This is amazing, Carol," he beamed, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket on a chilly day. He might not have been my father by blood, but he was more of a dad to me than the man who had left us all those years ago. College was an eye-opener. Surrounded by people who knew nothing of my family history, I could finally breathe, experiment, and grow. It was my chance to redefine myself, to build a new life on my terms, far from the shadows of my turbulent childhood. Finally, I found myself in an exhilarating new chapter where I could truly breathe and thrive. Surrounded by the vibrant pulse of university life, I challenged myself academically and cultivated friendships that were both genuine and uplifting. At 28, the world of adulthood unfolded before me, complete with endless spreadsheets and a small apartment that felt like a sprawling castle compared to the confined spaces of my childhood. Life was, for the most part, genuinely good. I was engrossed in a career as an economist that kept my mind active, and Charles, my incredible boyfriend of several years, brought a kind of joy and laughter into my life that I had never known before. One evening, as we enjoyed takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine, Charles, smiling that endearing goofy grin I adored, dropped a significant suggestion. "I think it's time we met each other's parents," he said. My stomach did a somersault at the thought. Meeting Charles's parents turned out to be a breeze. They lived in a charming house with a backyard fragrant with freshly cut grass. They welcomed me warmly. His mother, Emily, enveloped me in hugs, and his father, Jacob, kept us laughing all evening with his jokes. It was normal and heartwarming, a stark contrast to the family dinners of my past. However, the idea of Charles meeting my family filled me with dread. How could I possibly explain the years of emotional neglect and constant criticisms, or the heavy cloud of negativity that hung over my childhood? I shared everything with Charles, The arguments, the tears, and how my mother and Betty had slowly eroded my self-esteem. Betty had evolved into a skilled manipulator, adept at pressing just the right buttons. Charles listened patiently, his hand reassuringly on mine. "Carol," he said with conviction, "I'm marrying you, not your family. They might come with baggage, but you are the prize." His words were a salve to my wounded spirit, affirming his unwavering support and love. It gave me hope that perhaps I could create my own family, one filled with the love, acceptance, and laughter I had always longed for. With a mix of nerves and excitement, I dialed John's number. "Hey, John," I greeted him after he picked up, his voice as cheerful as ever. Taking a deep breath, I plunged into the news about Charles, our engagement, and the upcoming wedding. A pause followed my torrent of words, and then John's laughter rang through the phone. Warm and genuine. "Carol, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you both," he exclaimed. His enthusiastic response helped soothe some of my anxiety. "Listen," he continued, "you've got to bring him over for dinner. Let me meet the guy who finally snagged you." Charles, always supportive, agreed eagerly. So, a few weeks later, we found ourselves pulling up to my childhood home, a place that still stirred a complex blend of nostalgia and apprehension within me. My mother answered the door, her expression morphing into a surprised smile. "Carol, you came to visit. And who is this handsome fella?" "This is Charles, my fiancé," I replied, managing a tight smile. Charles stepped forward, offering his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Judy." My mom beamed, shaking his hand with a bit too much enthusiasm. "The pleasure's all mine, dear." "So, Charles, what do you do for a living?" Charles, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents of my mother's question, launched into a detailed explanation of his work, his enthusiasm undimmed by the complex dynamics of my family. As the director at a major corporation, John played his role of charming host effortlessly, filling the dinner with jokes and captivating stories to keep the conversation lively. Betty, however, was not one to be outshined. Throughout the meal, she batted her eyelashes at Charles, frequently interrupting our conversation to quiz him on every detail of his job and hobbies. Mom, always the attentive mother, hung on every word from Betty, creating a stark contrast to the subtle jabs she threw my way. "Carol, honey," she would say with a tone dripping in feigned sweetness, "you really should take some fashion advice from Betty. That dress you're wearing, well, it's not exactly flattering." Charles, bless his heart, seemed to miss the undercurrents of tension. But I knew exactly what was happening. Mom was undermining me, trying to make me feel small and insecure in front of my fiancé. The dinner felt like a distorted performance, a play where I was constantly reminded that I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, or successful enough. By the time dessert was served, I was ready to escape as soon as it was remotely polite. We made our excuses and left. As soon as we were safely in the car, Charles let out a long sigh. "Your mom, she's quite the character, isn't she?" he remarked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Yeah," I muttered, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "She can be something else." He squeezed my hand gently. "But hey, we made it through dinner, right?" He was right. We had survived, and despite Mom's negativity clouding the air, just holding Charles's hand gave me a sense of strength and reassurance. This was my future, one I was building with him, not with my dysfunctional family. The warm glow of post-dinner satisfaction lingered as Charles and I curled up on the couch that evening, flipping through wedding magazines. We envisioned a small, intimate ceremony in a charming vineyard, surrounded by people who truly loved and supported us. It was perfect, but the next morning, the dream shattered. My phone buzzed with Charles's name, the cheerful ringtone replaced by a chilling ring that sent shivers down my spine. "Carol," he said, his voice tight with a mix of anger and disbelief. "We have a problem." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" I asked. Charles took a deep breath. "Your mom," he began, and the color drained from my face. "What did she do this time?" Charles explained that Mom, the master manipulator, had somehow gotten his work phone number. Instead of offering congratulations, She had unleashed a verbal tirade that would make a sailor blush. In her twisted view, I was the epitome of inadequacy. Ugly, dull, and socially awkward. Worse, she had brought up my father's abandonment as if it were a weapon and suggested that Charles should leave me for Betty, claiming my younger sister was the epitome of beauty and brains. Fury boiled up inside me, a hot, venomous rage. How dare she try to sabotage my happiness again? Charles, equally furious, channeled his anger into an unexpected plan. A bold, thrilling strategy to expose her. "We set a trap," he said, his jaw clenched. The plan was simple. Charles would call Mom back, pretending to be swayed by her words, and arrange a meeting to discuss her ludicrous proposal. The goal was to record the entire conversation on his phone. Charles made the call. His voice was smooth and convincing, and Mom, completely oblivious to the trap being set, readily agreed to meet him for coffee. A nervous laugh bubbled up from my chest. This was it. Operation Momzilla Takedown was underway. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear. We were not going to let her manipulations dictate our future. But one thing was clear. I was no longer going to let my mother control my life. This time, the tables had turned, and I was prepared to take a stand. Fueled by a mix of righteous anger and a desperate need for change, I decided to face her directly at their meeting. The very idea of confronting her, even under the guise of a stranger, sent chills down my spine, but my resolve was stronger than my fear. Dressed in casual jeans and an old t-shirt, I donned a pair of thick, black glasses to complete my disguise. I positioned myself in a bustling cafe across the street from where my mother and Charles were scheduled to meet, becoming just another face in the crowd. As I sat in a corner booth, my stomach twisted into knots of nervous anticipation. I watched as my mother strutted into the cafe, a look of triumph plastered across her face. She found Charles seated in a secluded corner of the room, her smile broadening at the sight of him. This was it, the commencement of Operation Momzilla Takedown. Charles, with his knack for technology, had discreetly activated a recording app on his phone. Positioned nearby, I listened intently, my heart pounding as their conversation unfolded. The conversation began innocently enough, with Charles playing his role perfectly. Then, without hesitation, my mother launched into her venomous tirade. "You know, Charles," she began, leaning in with a conspiratorial air, "between you and me, Carol just isn't wife material." My blood ran cold. The woman who was supposed to protect and support me was openly criticizing me for the man I loved. "She's, well, a bit simple," my mother continued, her tone dripping with feigned sympathy, "and not very pretty either, if you know what I mean." Charles, maintaining an excellent poker face, simply nodded, offering vague responses. Inside, I knew he was seething with anger. My mother's voice then dropped to a whisper. "But Betty, now there's a girl with potential. Smart, beautiful, and she knows how to navigate society." It was almost laughable. Betty, with her shallow personality and lack of ambition, was suddenly the epitome of elegance and intelligence in my mother's eyes. The conversation was a masterclass in manipulation. My mother, blinded by her delusions, even confessed to never loving my stepfather, admitting she had married him only for his wealth. The depths of her shamelessness knew no bounds. After an eternity, my mother stood, her expression one of smug satisfaction. "Well, Charles, it was lovely meeting you. Think about what I said," she purred, patting his hand with her manicured nails as she left the cafe. Stunned and disgusted, I remained in my hiding spot. "So, what now?" I asked Charles once we were alone, my voice tight with emotion. He pulled me into a hug, his embrace a comforting shield against the storm of emotions. "Now," he said firmly, "we expose her." The air crackled with determination. The weekend that followed, I walked into my childhood home, where my mother's smug smile instantly set my teeth on edge. "Carol, honey, you won't believe it," she gushed, unable to contain her excitement. "What's that, Mom?" I asked, bracing myself for the inevitable. "Charles," she declared, her voice dripping with twisted satisfaction, "has decided to see reason. He's leaving you and marrying Betty." My heart stuttered, but I managed a forced smile. That's great, Mom. Happy for them. My stepdad, perpetually bewildered, cleared his throat awkwardly. Betty, lounging on the couch like royalty, let out a snide laugh. Apparently not, Dad. Carol just wasn't good enough for him. But I stood my ground, the recorded proof of her deceit tucked safely in my pocket, ready to bring down the facade of lies she had built around us. This was the moment of truth, and I was ready to reclaim my life from her manipulative grasp. Ignoring Betty's snide comment, my focus was fixed on Mom's self-satisfied expression. It was time for the truth. Calmly, I began, "Actually, Mom," my voice steady, surprising even myself, "Charles is right here." At that moment, Charles entered with a mischievous grin, immediately capturing the room's attention. "Hi, everyone," he greeted cheerily, just in time for a little family drama. With a flourish, he pulled out his phone and hit play. The room fell deathly silent as my mother's voice, dripping with malice, filled the space. The entire cafe conversation, her harsh words about me, her undue praises for Betty, and her shocking admission about marrying my stepfather for his wealth, played out. The color drained from Mom's face with each damning sentence. My stepdad's complexion turned pale, his jaw slacks with disbelief. Betty's facade of confidence shattered, replaced by a whimper of fear. When the recording ended, a heavy silence hung over the room before my stepfather finally exploded. "You lying snake," he roared, fury shaking his voice. "You married me for money?" For the first time in my life, Mom looked genuinely lost, her eyes welling up with tears, but the anger on my stepfather's face was too intense to ignore. "I want a divorce," he declared, his voice thick with resolve. "Get a lawyer." The room imploded into chaos. Mom and Betty burst into tears, their cries a cacophony of misery and self-pity. Charles, caught in the storm, looked utterly out of place, but amidst the upheaval, I felt an unexpected calm. The ugly, raw truth was out, shattering years of manipulation and lies. The weeks that followed were a blur. My stepdad moved through his days with a somber air, his sobs often heard late at night. Betty threw icy glares my way whenever we crossed paths. Mom, the architect of our family's downfall, retreated into a social media blackout. As for me, I felt a hollow emptiness. The anger that had driven me seemed to evaporate, leaving a void that needed filling. One sunny afternoon, as I listlessly flipped through wedding magazines that now seemed like relics from another era, Charles joined me on the couch. "Hey," he said, concern coloring his tone. "You all right?" I managed a weak smile. "Yeah, just thinking. Everything feels so different now." He pulled me into a hug. "It is different. But hey, different can be good. It's a chance to start fresh, you know?" His words, gentle and encouraging, nudged me toward a new perspective. Maybe he was right. Perhaps the void left by my mom could be filled with something new, something exciting. A spark of mischief lit my eyes as I looked up at him. "So, what do you say we do something crazy?" Charles's eyebrows rose. "Crazy like what?" "How about a road trip?" I suggested, a grin spreading across my face. "Just us, a map, and the open road. No expectations, no timelines, just pure adventure." "You had me at road trip," he declared, his enthusiasm matching mine. So we shifted gears. Our carefully planned vineyard wedding was swapped for a spontaneous cross-country adventure. We packed an old camper van with essentials, plenty of snacks, a killer playlist, and a well-worn copy of On the Road. With no set destination, we embraced the promise of new experiences and the joy of shared memories. Fast forward a year, Charles and I stood at an altar, not in a vineyard, but under a canopy of fragrant flowers in a beautifully improvised ceremony. It wasn't the elaborate event I had once imagined, but it was perfect in its spontaneity and sincerity, a true celebration of where our journey had taken us. The wedding was nothing short of perfect. Instead of facing a disapproving mother, my recently divorced stepdad, who had become estranged from Betty, walked me down the aisle. The tears in his eyes as he walked beside me were tinged with a mix of pride and regret. As he squeezed my hand gently, he whispered, "You know, kiddo, I always knew you'd find your happily ever after." It was a moment of heartfelt sincerity that I would cherish forever. Life after the wedding settled into a pleasant and familiar rhythm. Charles and I built our life together, one filled with laughter, love, and the occasional spontaneous road trip adventure that kept our spirits high and our bond strong. My stepdad, freed from the shadows of his past relationships, became a regular visitor in our home. He delighted us with tales of his travels and often dropped not-so-subtle hints about his eagerness to embrace the role of a grandfather soon. Each time he mentioned it, I would laugh and assure him, "Don't worry, you'll be the best grandpa ever." These moments, simple yet profound, marked a new chapter in our lives. They were built on the foundations of understanding, acceptance, and a redefined sense of family that went beyond past conflicts. We had transformed our struggles into strengths, and with each passing day, the life we were crafting together grew richer and more fulfilling. My name is Brenda, and throughout my life, I've been overshadowed by my older sister Martha, the family favorite. From the very beginning, our parents never explicitly said it, but their actions made it painfully clear. As a young child, I quickly learned my place. Growing up, Martha was showered with new clothes and the most sought-after gadgets for her birthdays. In contrast, I received hand-me-downs and practical gifts like socks and notebooks. I distinctly remember one Christmas, at the age of 13, when Martha received a shiny new iPhone, and I was handed down her old, barely functional flip phone. School events painted the same picture. My parents were ever present at Martha's volleyball games, yet they sporadically attended my debate competitions, even missing the state finals I worked so hard to reach. They effortlessly financed Martha's piano lessons, but when I expressed a desire to take art classes, they deemed it too costly, suggesting I should be content to practice drawing at home. High school graduations further illustrated the disparity. Martha's graduation was a grand affair with a large party and numerous guests, while mine was a quiet dinner at home. Upon heading to college, Martha was gifted a new car for convenience, justified by our father due to the large campus she needed to navigate. Meanwhile, I received a bus pass, even though I attended the same large university. Long ago, I stopped expecting fairness. As soon as I could, I moved into a modest apartment on the city's outskirts, which I proudly paid for with earnings from my post-college office job. Meanwhile, Martha enjoyed a luxurious apartment downtown, funded by our parents as she explored various career paths. Life fell into a routine. I attended monthly family dinners, where I listened to endless praises of Martha's endeavors, while barely any interest was shown in my achievements. I'd sit through these gatherings, counting down the moments until I could return to my own space, fighting off feelings of resentment. This routine persisted until last Sunday, which started like any other family dinner. I arrived at 7 p.m., finding Martha engrossed in her phone. As usual, Mom was busy preparing Martha's favorite dish, while Dad handled the drinks, inadvertently skipping me until I reminded him. The dinner conversation revolved around Martha's potential involvement with a startup, with no mention of my recent job promotion. However, the evening took an unexpected turn when Mom, with a spark of excitement, announced she had gifts for us. My stomach nodded, anticipating the usual imbalance in favoritism. Mom retrieved 2 large manila envelopes from the study, presenting Martha's with a flourish and mine as a mere afterthought. Martha ripped into hers with excitement, while I braced myself for disappointment and opened mine slowly. Inside, we both found official-looking documents. During a recent family gathering, my mother presented me with what she portrayed as a wonderful opportunity. "These are property documents," she said, her face bright with excitement. "It's your grandfather's estate, Martha. You're receiving a beautiful property." With your bright future, we're sure you'll put it to great use. Everyone's gaze shifted towards me, and smiles spread across their faces. My sister, Brenda, wasn't left out. And Brenda, my mother continued, we're giving you Grandpa's old cabin. You've always cherished your independence, and this suits you perfectly. The cabin she referred to as nothing more than a ramshackle hut, long neglected and lacking basic amenities like electricity and running water. It was an old hunting spot of Grandpa's, more of a relic than a residence. As I held the papers, a familiar cocktail of hurt, anger, and resignation surged through me, a blend that had shadowed my childhood. But something was different this time. Something within me broke. Are you serious? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Martha gets a fully renovated 3-bedroom house, and I'm left with a decrepit shack in the wilderness? My mother's eyes widened, clearly not expecting resistance. Now, Brenda, she soothed, her voice dripping with conciliation, you're being overly dramatic. It's a charming place with potential. It's situated on 4 acres of land. With a bit of effort, it could be transformed into a delightful retreat. Some effort. I scoffed, my laughter sharp and biting. There's no electricity, no water, no internet. The roof is probably full of holes. Fixing it up would cost more than I can afford. Martha, ever the pragmatist, was already perusing her phone, likely calculating her new property's value. You should be grateful, she remarked dismissively. Most people don't even receive property as a gift. That was the last straw. I stood so abruptly, my chair clattered to the floor. Grateful? I've spent my life being grateful for the scraps you deemed unworthy, Martha. Just once, I hoped for fairness. In a swift motion, I gathered the property documents and stuffed them into my bag. This isn't a gift, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. It's a burden, a way for you to avoid paying taxes on a useless piece of land. My mother gasped, denial on her lips, but her eyes betrayed the truth. I'm done, I declared. I'm done pretending this is okay. I stormed out, ignoring their calls, the echo of Grandpa's words about his escapes to the cabin resonating with me for the first time. Over the next few days, I tried to ignore the whole ordeal, immersing myself in work and distractions. Mom's voicemails piled up, full of the usual platitudes, but I resisted the urge to respond. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I reviewed the property documents only to discover an outrageous annual tax bill of nearly $4,200, a hefty sum for my modest budget. I called the county assessor's office the following day. Yes, that's correct, the clerk confirmed. It's 4 acres with potential road frontage. The area's becoming more desirable. I hung up, feeling a mix of nausea and indignation. This gift was set to bleed my savings dry unless I took swift action. The solution was clear. I needed to sell the land. That evening, I dug up some old family photos of the cabin, took snaps of the property documents, and set up an online listing. I described the place with plain honesty. Fixer-upper cabin on 4 acres, sold as is, and set the price at $167,000, hoping to attract buyers interested mainly in the land. Then I settled in for a wait. For 3 long months, my phone stayed quiet. No inquiries came, and I started considering lowering the price. But everything turned around one Tuesday morning. I woke to find 5 messages about the property. By lunchtime, there were 5 more, and by evening, someone had thrown in an offer of $31,000, without even visiting the site. My heart skipped. This was $7,000 above my asking price. I was about to accept the offer when another one came in at $38,000. Suddenly, it seemed like a bidding war was unfolding right under my nose. Offers kept surging. $42,000, $48,000. My phone rang nonstop, each caller eager to outbid the last. By the end of the week, I got a call that left me floored. Miss Wilson, this is Lawrence from Evergreen Development Group. We'd like to offer you $60,000 for your property. I could hardly believe it. $60,000 for a rundown cabin? I agreed to meet the following week, but my mind was racing. Something significant was unfolding, and I was clueless. That night, I scoured the internet for any clue that could explain the sudden interest in my seemingly worthless cabin. Most searches led nowhere, but eventually, I stumbled upon a notice on the County Planning Commission's website about a proposed eco-friendly residential development near my property. Still needing clearer answers, I called Cynthia first thing Saturday morning. We'd been college friends, and she'd been in real estate for years. "Cynthia, do you know anything about development plans near Grandpa's old cabin?" After giving her the details, there was a stunned silence on the line. "Brenda, are you sitting down?" she asked. "That whole area is about to become a hotbed for an eco-village aimed at wealthy tech executives and celebrities, solar-powered, farm-to-table dining, luxury homes with minimal environmental impact." "Why haven't I heard about this sooner?" I pressed. "They've kept it under wraps to prevent land price speculation," Cynthia whispered. "And don't settle for $60,000. If Evergreen is involved, they're likely acting as middlemen for Green Valley, aiming to snag your land cheap and flip it." "How much should I ask for?" I inquired, my pulse quickening. "Given the situation, your 4 acres could be worth close to $1 million, she chuckled. I nearly dropped the phone. $1 million for a cabin that had been a family afterthought? After our call, I spent the weekend in a daze, trying to absorb the surreal turn of events. The property I'd almost dismissed as a burdensome tax dodge could potentially transform my financial future. Come Monday, I phoned Lawrence. "Mr. Lawrence, I've considered your offer," I began, striving for calmness. "I'm willing to sell, but not for $60,000. There was a pause. "What price did you have in mind?" he asked, his tone smooth. $1.2 million. Silence stretched between us. When he finally responded, his voice was less assured. "Miss Wilson, that seems unreasonable. Perhaps you've misunderstood the value of your property." "I understand perfectly," I countered, confidence surging. "It's 4 acres in the heart of where Green Valley Developments plans to construct their new eco-village." Another pause followed. "I see you've done your homework," he admitted. Indeed, I had. The once overlooked cabin was now a $1 million opportunity, and I was ready to negotiate from a position of strength. I understood the importance of my land for their project, but $1 million price tag was more than I was prepared to accept. With resolve, I stated, "We need to think this over. How about we discuss it further?" Agreeing, we set a meeting for the following day at their office. The negotiation that ensued was nothing short of intense. Accompanied by my advisor Cynthia and facing Lawrence and the actual buyers from Green Valley, we plunged into discussions. They opened with an offer of $150,000, to which I firmly countered with $1.5 million. As they increased their offer to $420,000, I adjusted mine to $1.3 million. After 4 grueling hours, we all reached our limits, the final offer resting at $1.3 million. "Take it," Cynthia urged discreetly. "It's a great deal." Across the table, a team clad in expensive suits awaited my response. These individuals likely hadn't experienced many denials or hardships like I had. "I'll accept $1.3 million, I declared, "but the deal needs to close in 3 weeks." They agreed, and we sealed the agreement with a handshake. 2 weeks later, in the office of the title company, I watched the final documents being signed. The representative handed me the check, marking my unexpected journey into wealth. The land I had once seen as a burden had now paved my path to financial freedom. The first action I took after depositing the check was to clear my student loans of $120,000. Then, I began searching for a new home and settled on a lovely 3-bedroom condo in a desirable neighborhood, costing $420,000. This purchase left me with a substantial sum, far more than I had ever imagined. To manage this newfound wealth, I sought the expertise of Evelyn, a financial advisor specializing in sudden wealth. Together, we crafted a diverse investment portfolio that included index funds, bonds, and a selection of stocks, with a portion reserved for potential startup investments. Despite the financial comfort, I chose to continue working. The familiarity with my colleagues and daily routines brought structure to my life, but the financial security transformed my outlook. The pervasive anxiety over finances that had shadowed me for years disappeared. I started making modest upgrades to my lifestyle, purchasing new furniture, replacing my old car with a dependable model, and not fretting over grocery prices. Then, I fulfilled a lifelong dream, planning a 3-week European tour to visit Zurich, Venice, and Berlin. The night before leaving, I shared photos of my packed bags and new passport on Instagram, captioned with the excitement of my impending adventure. While enjoying a coffee near the Eiffel Tower, browsing through the supportive comments, I spotted one from my cousin Margaret, hinting at my recent move. I hadn't told my extended family about the condo, and it struck a chord of concern, but I decided not to let it overshadow my trip. When I arrived home after my European adventure, I noticed 4 missed calls from my mom and a text message that read, "Please call us when you get back. We'd love to have you over for dinner on Sunday." It had been 8 months since I last spoke to them, walking out after a heated argument. Despite my reluctance, curiosity got the better of me. What could they possibly want now? "Hi, Mom," I said as she picked up the phone. Her voice was unnaturally cheerful. "Brenda, you're back. We've missed you. Can you come to dinner this Sunday? Your father and I would love to see you, and Martha will be there too." I paused for a moment, then agreed. Driving to my parents' house on Sunday felt like stepping back in time. My mom welcomed me with a warm hug, seemingly forgetting our last tumultuous meeting. Dinner started off well. She had prepared my favorite lasagna, and they both seemed genuinely interested in my European travels. It wasn't until dessert that the true motive behind their invitation surfaced. "We saw photos of your new apartment on Margaret's feed," my mom mentioned casually. "It looks lovely, very spacious." "Thanks," I replied, wary of where this was heading. "Margaret mentioned it's in the Westbrook building." "That's a nice, expensive place," my dad added. I nodded, taking a bite of my apple pie. "She also mentioned you own it outright," my mom continued, eyeing me intently. I set down my fork. "I told Margaret I had a mortgage," I responded calmly, correcting her assumption. Martha scoffed. "Come on, Brenda. We know you couldn't afford a place like that on your salary. We're not stupid." I took a sip of water, giving myself a moment to gather my thoughts. "I've been making good investments," I explained. "And I work hard. Things are going well for me." "What kind of investments?" my dad pressed, curious about the details. "Stock market, real estate, various things," I replied vaguely. Martha rolled her eyes. "Stop lying. We know you sold Grandpa's cabin. The eco-village development is all over the news. They're making a big deal about acquiring all the necessary land parcels. Your little shack was mentioned specifically because it was one of the last holdouts." Mom leaned in, all pretense of a casual conversation gone. "Brenda, how much did you sell it for?" I hesitated, knowing they would eventually find out. $1.3 million, I admitted. The room fell silent. My mom's face paled, my dad's jaw dropped, and Martha's eyes widened in shock. Martha recovered first, her surprise quickly turning to anger. "So, you've been sitting on almost $1 million and didn't tell any of us? We're struggling to pay for my wedding while Mom and Dad are worried about retirement." "You're struggling?" I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Mom and Dad paid for your entire education, bought you a car, and covered your rent for years. You even got Grandpa's actual house, which is worth at least $500,000. "That's different," Martha snapped. "How is it different?" I challenged. "Because we're family," she shouted. "Family shares things. Family doesn't hide money and pretend to be poor while taking expensive vacations." I stood up, suddenly tired of the entire conversation. "I should go," I said, moving towards the door. "Wait, Brenda, let's not fight," my mom pleaded, grabbing my arm. "We just thought maybe you'd want to share some of your good fortune with the family." "If you hadn't given me the cabin," I interrupted, "you would have sold it yourselves and kept all the money. You gave it to me, remember?" I left, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. My newfound independence and financial security were mine to manage, and the evening reminded me just how complex family dynamics could be when money was involved. Because they believed it was worthless and wanted to offload the tax burden onto me, I refused to give them any of my earnings. For the second time in 8 months, I walked out on them, tuning out their calls as I drove back to my new condo. Alone with my thoughts, I pondered whether a normal relationship with my family was ever going to be possible again. 2 weeks following that disastrous dinner, I received a letter from my parents' lawyer. Concerned, I contacted my investment advisor, Evelyn, who recommended a reputable attorney. The next day, I found myself in Matthew's office, laying out all my documents on his desk. "This is straightforward," he remarked after reviewing the details. "The property was legally transferred to you. You have the deed, and the sale was properly executed. Their claim has no merit." "Will they actually sue?" I asked. Matthew leaned back, considering. "They could, but they'd lose. My guess is they're bluffing. Let's respond and see what happens." We scheduled a meeting in his office. My parents showed up with their slick lawyer, Edward. I sat quietly with Matthew by my side while the attorneys talked. Edward started. "My clients are prepared to negotiate in good faith. They believe a 35% share of the proceeds would be reasonable given the circumstances." Matthew's reply was calm yet firm. Miss Wilson legally owned the property. The deed was properly transferred to her name over a year ago. She had full rights to sell it at any time. "The transfer was made under pretenses," Edward countered. "My clients did not know of the development plans." "Neither did Miss Wilson when she received the property," Matthew pointed out. "She discovered the information through her diligence after inheriting what everyone, including your clients, believed was an essentially worthless cabin." The argument went back and forth for nearly an hour until my mother cut in, her voice shaky. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Martha's getting married in 5 months, and we're struggling with the wedding costs. Can't you help us out? Even 14% would make a huge difference." I was almost moved by her plea, almost. "No," I stated firmly. "I won't be giving you any percentage. You can sue me if you want, but Matthew has already explained how that will go." My father's tone turned bitter. "This isn't about the money. It's about respect. We raised you, put a roof over your head, and food on the table, and made sure I knew I was second best every single day of my life. I finished for him. I've been on my own since I was 20, put myself through college, and built my career. Now, I'm making my own decisions about my money." The meeting ended shortly after that, with no resolution. Matthew reassured me they had no legal grounds to stand on. If they hadn't filed a lawsuit within a few months, they probably never would. He was right. No lawsuit materialized. Instead, the family gossip mill kicked into overdrive. Suddenly, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out with sad stories and business propositions. "Brenda, sweetie, it's been too long," one would say. "Hey, cuz, remember me? I've got this amazing business opportunity," another would chime in. Others pleaded for financial help for surgeries that insurance wouldn't cover. The stories were endless, each seemingly more desperate than the last. While some were probably true, most felt like transparent attempts to tap into my newfound wealth. Following Matthew's advice, I blocked the most persistent callers, stopped answering unknown numbers, changed my email, and tightened my social media privacy settings. It felt odd having to shield myself from my own family, but establishing these boundaries was necessary to protect my peace and my future. However, distancing myself from most of my family was a necessary step. Only a few relatives remained close to me, those who had stayed in touch even when they thought I had nothing. There was my cousin Lauren, who always treated me like a sister, and my Uncle Willie, who never missed sending a birthday card every year. These were the people who valued me for who I was, long before money entered the picture. 8 months after the cabin sale, I settled into a new rhythm in life. I continued at the same company, but now chose projects that genuinely interested me rather than just those that paid well. I traveled whenever I desired, crafting a life that felt authentically mine. One afternoon, while going through my mail, I found a brochure from a charity focused on children's education. Instead of discarding it, I set it aside. That evening, I researched the organization online and was impressed by its efficiency and dedication. Most of its funds went directly to the programs rather than administrative costs. They focused on providing scholarships to underprivileged children, especially those overlooked by traditional merit-based schemes. The next day, I made a generous, anonymous donation. That initial donation sparked something within me. It felt so rewarding that I began exploring other charitable causes. I looked into organizations supporting first-generation college students, mental health resources for young adults, and programs helping individuals escape toxic family situations. Over the next year, I contributed to numerous causes, always anonymously. With Evelyn's assistance, I set up a sustainable and tax-efficient charitable giving plan. These weren't just donations. They were investments in people who reminded me of myself, those who faced uphill battles similar to the ones I had conquered. I never reconciled with my parents or Martha. Occasionally, snippets of their lives reached me through the family grapevine. Martha had her lavish wedding, and despite their financial struggles, my parents managed to give her a substantial gift. Some dynamics within my family remained unchanged, but that was okay. I had found my path. Strangely, I owed them gratitude. If they hadn't given me that worthless cabin, if they had ever treated me as an equal just once, none of this, my newfound independence, financial security, and philanthropic efforts, would have come to pass. Their actions, however unintentionally, set me on this course, and for that, I was oddly thankful. The diamond hall at the Oakwood Hotel was alive with twinkling lights as each chandelier scattered colorful prisms across the room filled with well-dressed guests. I watched from a shadowy corner near the entrance, observing the festivities unfold as if it were a grand play. My sister, Tiffany, glided among the guests in her designer wedding dress, gracefully accepting congratulations. Close behind her, our parents, Bobby and Denise Miller, beamed with pride, a joy they never seemed to have for me. "Please sign here, Miss Johnson," the wedding coordinator whispered to me, handing over a tablet for the final payment. I hid a smile under my assumed name, the name I'd used to secretly buy the Oakwood Hotel chain 4 years earlier. Little did they know Betty Johnson, the elusive hotel magnate, was actually me, Betty Miller, the daughter they had declared dead 8 years ago. I signed the tablet and returned it, adjusting the elegant mask covering the top half of my face. The masquerade theme, Tiffany's idea, unknowingly helped conceal my true identity even from our parents. The ceremony was beautiful, I told the coordinator, putting on a slight Spanish accent that I had adopted for my persona of Betty Johnson. She smiled at the compliment, unaware of who I really was. "Thank you, Miss Johnson. We're honored you're here to oversee the Miller wedding. They're a prominent New York family, you know." I was well aware. The Millers' shipping empire dates back to the 1900s. To my parents, maintaining this legacy of success was paramount, even if it meant disowning their daughter for rejecting an arranged marriage to a rival business heir. At 25, freshly graduated and full of modern business ideas, I argued against outdated traditions like arranged marriages. The fallout was severe. My father's fury, my mother's cold disappointment, and finally, an ultimatum. Marry the chosen suitor or be cut off. I chose freedom, secretly drained my trust fund, and vanished. Initially, I survived in a cheap motel, immersing myself in modern business strategies and digital innovations. I reinvented myself, adopting a new look and accent, creating Betty Johnson from nothing. Meanwhile, my parents concocted a dramatic narrative for my absence. They told everyone I had died in a sailing accident, even staging a funeral with an empty casket. 8 months later, I discovered my death when an email to my sister bounced back, revealing through her social media the lie. That was the moment Betty Miller truly died, and Betty Johnson took full form. "Miss Johnson, would you like to be seated for dinner?" The coordinator interrupted my thoughts. I nodded and followed her to a table strategically placed to keep me involved yet unnoticed. The irony of funding my sister's wedding while owning the mansion my parents lived in wasn't lost on me. Over the years, I had discreetly acquired every property and business my family frequented or partnered with. They were just unaware of it. Suddenly, my father's voice boomed across the room. gathering everyone's attention for a toast. "Today, we celebrate the marriage of my only daughter, Tiffany," he proclaimed, the words striking me sharply. Despite everything, the sting of being erased from my family remained. "It was a day filled with mixed emotions," he said, his voice laden with emotion. "I couldn't help but remember our dear Betty, Tiffany's sister, who passed away too soon. She would have cherished being here today." Beside him, my mother wiped her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the epitome of a grieving mother missing her daughter. Little did they know, that lost child was just 45 feet away, wielding more power and wealth than the Miller family had gathered in 5 generations. A server offered me champagne, and I took a moment to compose myself. I hadn't come for vengeance, or so I told myself. I had built my empire on real innovation, turning underperforming businesses into industry leaders. It just so happened that I now controlled most of my family's enterprises, a convenient outcome. "Such a pity about their older daughter," an elderly woman next to me murmured, eager to share rumors with the enigmatic hotel owner. "Poor girl died in a boating accident, they say. She was quite rebellious and even refused an excellent marriage proposal. Some even say she might have done it intentionally," she hinted vaguely. As people speculated about my suicide, it fit their narrative better than the truth, that I had chosen freedom over their oppressive control. Tiffany stood to speak, her husband glowing beside her. My sister had blossomed into a beautiful woman, her elegance reminiscent of our mother. "Thank you for being here," she started, her voice polished from years of elite schooling. "Today is nearly perfect, but we miss my sister, Betty," she continued, pausing dramatically. "Betty was not just my big sister. She was my guardian, my idol. She always said that anything is possible if you're brave enough to chase your dreams. I just wish," she paused again, "I just wish she could see that I've finally found mine." The crowd responded with murmurs of sympathy. I had to stop myself from laughing. Tiffany was 14 when I left, old enough to know exactly what our parents had done. Yet, she had eagerly embraced the role of the perfect daughter, never even bothering to warn me about the staged story of my demise. As dinner began, I observed the main table. My parents, Tiffany, her husband, and his wealthy relatives looked like they belonged in a high society magazine, flawlessly styled, utterly poised, but utterly fake. A decade ago, their facade had overwhelmed me. Now, I saw them for what they were. Trivial people clinging to obsolete power, oblivious to the changing world. The shipping industry they had once dominated was evolving, and they hadn't kept up. Their empire was falling apart, secretly sustained only by the covert investments I had made through anonymous corporations. Miss Johnson, a man in a costly suit, approached my table, recognized as Matthew Taylor, my almost father-in-law. He looked significantly older. "I hope you're enjoying the evening," he said. "We were both surprised and honored to hear you'd be attending." I smiled discreetly behind my mask. "I make it a point to attend special events at my top hotels, Mr. Taylor, especially when it involves such esteemed families," I told him. He seemed pleased by the flattery. "Yes, the Millers have been a cornerstone of New York society for generations, though I must admit, recent years have been tough." I remained politely silent, fully aware of the challenges he mentioned. My firms had gradually taken over controlling stakes in their key shipping routes, modernized the operations, and tightened their profit margins. "The industry isn't what it used to be," he sighed deeply. "These tech startups and modern logistics companies are turning everything upside down. Just last month, we lost our biggest client to a newcomer called Dragon Shipping." I managed to keep my expression neutral. Dragon Shipping, one of my earliest acquisitions, turned from a struggling local shipper into a leading digital logistics empire. "Progress can be tough to handle," I said diplomatically. "Progress," he scoffed. "In my day, business was about relationships, about family ties. Did you know my son was supposed to marry Bobby Miller's elder daughter? That would have been a merger to celebrate. But she had other plans," he sighed. "Tragic, really, what happened to her. Maybe for the best, given her defiant nature." I clenched my champagne flute a little tighter. Before I could reply, a disturbance at the main table caught everyone's attention. My mother had stood up, slightly unsteady, clearly having enjoyed the champagne a bit too much. "I just have to say," she announced, her speech marked by a drunk's exaggerated clarity, "how wonderful it is to see all our dear friends here today, especially those who stood by us after we lost our Elena." I sat frozen, watching the spectacle unfold. "Such a hard time," she continued, dabbing her eyes, "having to tell everyone about our daughter, the shame of it all. But we preserved the family name, didn't we, Bobby? We gave her a proper farewell, even though she didn't deserve it." "Margaret," my father's voice sliced through her ramblings sharply, "perhaps you should sit down." But the champagne had stripped away her usual poise. "Oh, but darling, I must tell Miss Johnson what an honor it is to have her here. Such a successful woman, and self-made at that. Nothing at all like our poor Betty, who thought she could ignore her family duties and succeed alone." She laughed harshly, the sound as brittle as breaking glass. "As if a Miller could ever make it without family help. She didn't even last a month before." "That's enough," my father interrupted, standing abruptly, his face red with embarrassment. "Margaret, you're causing a scene?" The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on my mother's meltdown with shocked fascination. Tiffany was covering her face, her new husband awkwardly patting her shoulder. I rose slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor, drawing my mother's gaze to me. "Miss Johnson," she called out, her drunk focus unnerving, "you simply must share your secret. How does a woman with no family name and no connections build such an empire?" Betty thought she could do the same, you know. Though she was smarter than generations of Miller business acumen, and now she's... "What, mother?" The words slipped out, my accent revealing itself. For a moment, recognition flickered across her face, though it seemed impossible. She blinked, looking confused by the question from a stranger. My father reached her side, taking her arm firmly. "I apologize for my wife," he said smoothly, the veneer of control back in place. The excitement of the day combined with the memories. "Please, everyone, continue to enjoy your dinner." He led her away, likely to a quiet room to sleep off the champagne in a hotel I owned, just like the mansion they still lived in and the companies they no longer controlled. I resettled in my chair, a little shaken. Nearly exposing my true identity wasn't part of the plan, yet here I was, letting old grudges nearly ruin years of strategy. The elderly woman next to me offered a comforting pat, saying, "Don't mind them, dear. Old money, like the Miller struggles with change. The world today is for the self-made, the innovators like you. Heard your hotel chain is moving into shipping too." "Something like that," I murmured, regaining my composure. Little did she know, my hotels were just the facade. I controlled a billion-dollar empire aimed at dismantling the Miller's legacy. Dinner passed with trivial chatter. My father smoothed things over with guests. My mother was absent, all of them relics of a fading era. When the wedding planner asked if I'd stay overnight, I declined. "I've seen enough family drama," I said, handing her a thick envelope for my sister, a wedding gift she'd never traced back to me. "Make sure they have everything they need, and send some aspirin to Mrs. Miller's room for the morning." Leaving the ballroom, my father raised a toast to the family. Ironic, given they'd erased their daughter, Betty Miller, but Betty Johnson was very much alive and just beginning. In my car, I instructed my assistant Kayla over the phone. "Execute Phase 4. It's time the Millers found out who they're really dealing with." The next morning from my office, watching the antiquated Miller ships, I knew my mother's slip had pushed my plans ahead. Now was the time to act. Kayla updated me. The wedding cost the Millers over $500,000 on credit. Their financial situation is critical. "And the Taylor merger?" I asked. "Like tying 3 stones hoping they'll float," she said. "Send out the rate hikes to their clients," I instructed. "Let's see who sticks around for outdated shipping when modern logistics are cheaper." Kayla nodded, adding, "Your father's called an emergency board meeting for Miller shipping tomorrow." "Perfect," I said, a smirk crossing my face. "Prepare the paperwork." The game was set, and I was ready to make my move. Betty Johnson was about to make a bold entrance at Miller Shipping. Kayla's voice quivered with concern. "Are you sure about this?" I responded quietly. They buried their daughter to save face. Now they'll see the cost. The next day, I dressed meticulously, a blood-red Armani suit that screamed authority, Louboutin heels that echoed sharply on marble, and a small gold compass pendant from my grandmother, the only Miller who had truly cared for me. Miller Shipping's headquarters looked the same as it did a decade ago, the same sturdy granite structure, the same brass nameplate from 1935, and the same portrait of my great-grandfather looking stern in the lobby. But today, there was a palpable tension, whispers, and uneasy glances as people noticed my arrival. "Miss Johnson," the receptionist stammered, caught off guard. "We weren't expecting. That's because the board meeting is supposed to be private," I interjected, handing her a thick envelope showing my credentials as the majority shareholder of Dragon Shipping and a major creditor of Miller Shipping. She trembled as she checked the documents, her face turning pale as she realized the extent of my control. "Of course," she stuttered, directing me to the 15th floor boardroom. Riding the elevator, I centered myself, listening through a discreet earpiece as Kayla updated me. "All board members are present. Your father is trying to push an emergency restructuring plan. He thinks he can save the company without help." The boardroom doors were imposing, made of heavy oak. I paused outside, hearing familiar voices through the wood. "We can't accept these terms," my father argued. "Dragon Shipping is trying to steal our company piece by piece." "We don't have a choice, Bobby," another voice countered. "We're losing clients. Our ships are outdated, and this mysterious Betty Johnson owns half the ports we use." I pushed the doors open, and the room fell silent. 12 men in suits stared, taken aback by the sudden interruption. At the head of the table, my father froze, his expression darkening as he recognized me from his daughter's wedding. "Miss Johnson," he finally said, his voice strained, "this is a private meeting." "Not anymore," I replied, striding to the table, my heels echoing in the quiet room. "Please, don't let me interrupt. Continue discussing the terms my company has set." "Your company?" he spat out. "Dragon Shipping is just an upstart, using digital tricks to steal clients. Miller Shipping has survived generations. It will survive precisely 10 more days," I interrupted smoothly, placing a folder on the table. Inside were documents detailing my ownership of their assets, evidence of their debts, failed updates, and their desperate attempts to keep up appearances while their empire crumbled. "This is impossible," my father murmured, flipping through the pages. "These properties, our house, the hotel chain, they all belong to me." "They belong to you," I corrected, "along with controlling interest in most of your remaining clients' companies. Face it, Mr. Miller, you're not just losing, you've already lost." He slammed the folder down. "Who are you? Is some tech billionaire trying to dismantle a legacy business? You have no idea what family tradition means." "Family tradition." I removed my sunglasses, meeting his gaze. "Like the tradition of forcing your children into loveless marriages? Or declaring them dead when they refuse to comply?" His face went pale. "No," he whispered in disbelief. "It's not possible, Betty." One of the older board members gasped, recognition dawning. I smiled coldly. "Betty Johnson, actually. I took the name after you killed me. It's better for business than being the dead daughter of a failing shipping magnate." Chaos erupted in the boardroom as members shouted questions, and my father collapsed back into his chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. As the sound of an emergency alarm echoed through the building, I raised my voice, cutting through the chaos. "You have exactly 30 hours to accept the merger proposal. If you refuse, I'll call in all outstanding debts and secure your remaining assets through my subsidiaries. Your choice." I paused at the door, then added, "Oh, and father, you might want to check on mother. I hear she's still reeling from her performance at Tiffany's wedding." As I exited, security guards rushed in, likely summoned by my father. I couldn't help but smile. They were employed by me, though they were unaware of it. In the elevator, Kayla's voice crackled through my earpiece. That was quite the scene. "They love their theatrics," I replied, having mastered the art from the best. "Your mother's in the lobby," Kayla added. I tensed. "She arrived about 10 minutes ago, and seems to have sobered up from the champagne. The elevator doors opened to reveal Denise Miller, the epitome of New York's high society, standing poised even as her world crumbled. She was near the portrait of my great-grandfather, a spot where I had stood at 20, being lectured about family duty. "Miss Johnson," she began, her voice as brittle as thin ice, or should I say Betty? "Will do," I interrupted, but only in private. Publicly, I'm still very much deceased. Your choice, as I recall. She flinched. "We did what we had to, for the family name." "The family name?" I laughed, the sound reverberating off the marble walls. "Look around, Mother. The Miller name isn't worth the brass it's engraved on. The only thing keeping this company afloat is my money, which means it's my name on the line now." "You're enjoying this, destroying everything we built," she accused. "No." I stepped closer, the familiar scent of her perfume in the air. "I'm saving everything you destroyed. The company will survive, modernize, grow, but not under Miller's hands." Her lips trembled. We thought you were dead, poor failed. You thought your rebellious daughter couldn't possibly succeed without your help. That's why you erased me, because the alternative was admitting you might be wrong." A tear streaked down her cheek, cutting through her makeup. "Betty, please. We can fix this. Come home." "I'm not that naive girl anymore," I stated, walking past her toward the entrance. "You have 30 hours to accept the merger. Don't worry, I'll let you keep the house. Consider it a wedding gift to Tiffany." Outside, the summer sun warmed my face, a stark contrast to the chill of the Miller building. I glanced back once to see my mother's silhouette through the glass doors, small and lost. In the car, Kayla reported, "Phase 4 complete. The board is in chaos. Our lawyers are ready, and rumors are already spreading." "What's our next move?" Kayla asked. I checked my phone, buzzing with calls from desperate board members and family friends suddenly realizing who I really was. Let them talk, let them panic. The next 30 hours will determine the fate of everything. We wait, I decided. Then we show them exactly what the dead daughter can do. The 30 hours felt like an eternity. I spent them in my penthouse, overlooking New York Harbor, ignoring pleas and offers as they came in. The media had caught wind, speculating wildly about the supposedly dead heiress turned billionaire CEO. "The Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive," Kayla noted, handing me coffee. "Not yet," I said, savoring the aroma. "Let them speculate. The real story will unfold after the board's decision." "And if they refuse the merger?" I smiled at the thought. "They wouldn't dare." Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from the board's secretary. The vote was unanimous. They accepted the merger terms. Even my father hadn't opposed it. "Set up the press conference," I instructed Kayla. 3 hours, main lobby of Miller Shipping. "Tell them Betty Johnson will be making a major announcement." As I touched the compass pendant at my neck, a reminder of my grandmother, I prepared to step back into the world not just as Betty Johnson, but as Betty Miller reborn. The lobby was crowded when I arrived. Reporters and Miller Shipping employees were everywhere. My father stood with the board on stage, looking much older. I delayed my entrance by 15 minutes for a bit of satisfaction. Wearing a blue suit that matched the company logo, I stepped forward. "Thank you for coming." I started at the podium. "I'm Betty Johnson, or as some of you know, Betty Miller." The crowd went silent, then erupted with questions. I left 8 years ago to avoid an arranged marriage, not because of a sailing accident as my family claimed. They pretended I was dead rather than admit I left, I explained. As I announced the merger of Miller Shipping with my company, Dragon Shipping, security stopped my father from interrupting. "We're transforming the company. The old ways and old board are out," I declared. Questions flew from reporters as Tiffany, looking stunned, pushed through the crowd to the stage. "You were at my wedding watching us?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I replied, acknowledging her presence and our past. It's time for a change, whether the old guard likes it or not. Although young, she was still scared of becoming someone like me. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I miss you. The real you, not the version they talk about at parties." For the first time, I felt my guard falter. I missed you too, but I couldn't be who they wanted. I had to be true to myself. Suddenly, a reporter called out, breaking the moment. "What's next for the Miller family?" Turning back to the crowd, my professional mask was back on. "They'll keep their personal assets, the ones not already legally mine, and they'll be fairly compensated for their shares. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to rescue a company and family ties that lost their way." I glanced at my father, defeated on his stage, and my mother, silently crying in the audience. Tiffany was torn between the sister she lost and the parent she chose. "Some things," I said softly, "can't be fixed with money or business deals." The Millers disowned their daughter rather than accept her choices. That kind of rejection doesn't just vanish because she returned successfully. The press conference wound down. Reporters got their quotes, photographers their shots of the triumphant return, and the crowd slowly left. I remained on stage, watching my parents consult with their lawyers while Tiffany lingered, unsure. Kayla came up to me. "The papers are ready to be signed in a private room." I nodded. "Give me a minute." When the lobby had nearly emptied, I approached my parents. Up close, they looked worn and frail, nothing like the formidable figures of my youth. "The lawyers will explain everything," I stated professionally. "You'll be comfortable. The house and vacation properties are yours for life. I don't want to leave you destitute, just powerless." My father responded bitterly. "Like you were?" I smiled coldly. "The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. Sign the papers, accept a peaceful retirement, maybe even try to mend our family or fight me, lose it all, and prove that pride is more important than family." My mother reached out and took my hand, her expensive rings pressing into my skin. "We thought we were protecting you," she whispered. "The business world is tough for women." I pulled my hand back. "I know how tough it is. I succeeded not because of the Miller name, but because you forced me to make it on my own." Tiffany stepped forward. "Betty, what about me?" "You're my sister," I said simply. "My door is always open to you when you're ready to see me as I am, not as they wish me to be." As I turned to leave, I paused. "Oh, and Mother, next time you're drunk at a party in my hotel, try not to boast about how you erased your daughter. It's bad for both our reputations." The paperwork took less than an hour. Signatures were exchanged, hands shook, and just like that, Miller Shipping was under new management. The company would retain its name, but everything else would change. New board, new approaches, a new future. That night, in my office, I watched the ships in the harbor, soon to bear the Dragon Shipping logo, updated with the latest technology and integrated into my larger transportation network. The Miller legacy would live on, just not as my parents envisioned. Kayla brought a bottle of champagne. "To the merger," she said. "To the truth," I corrected, raising my glass. "Sometimes, it takes a figurative death to breathe new life." "Your sister's been calling," Kayla mentioned cautiously, "and your grandmother's compass?" I touched the pendant. "Grandma knew. She left me this compass the day before I disappeared, reminding me that the right path isn't always the easy one. She would have loved to see this," I mused, sipping the champagne. "She always said our family pride would sink us faster than any storm." My phone buzzed again. It was Tiffany. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. "Talk, just us?" I gazed out at the harbor, where the Miller ships lay shrouded in darkness. "Come over, it's time you saw who your sister really is," I said before hanging up. I asked Kayla to order dinner for two. It was going to be a long night. Tonight was about bridging the gap between the sister thought lost and the woman who emerged from those very ashes. Perhaps, just perhaps, something good might surface from all this. I was no longer Betty Miller. The girl they claimed had perished, but Betty Johnson, stronger, wildly successful, and finally, truly free. The merger would rescue their company and the money would maintain their lifestyle. But the truth? That was going to save me. This wasn't about settling scores or chasing fortune. It was about a girl who had to let go of who she was to discover who she could be. I lifted my glass toward the silent harbor. "Farewell, Betty Miller," I said softly. "Your story ends here, but mine is just beginning." Then I turned away from the past and stepped forward to meet my sister and whatever future waited beyond the door. After wrapping up a 2-week business trip in France, Alexis Williams found herself in the familiar confines of a yellow cab from JFK. She was exhausted, and as the city lights blazed past, her phone buzzed with a message from her husband Vincent, who is currently in Australia. His words, "Did you arrive safely? Be careful with the weather. The taxi might take a bit," brought a weary smile to her face. Despite the years and the distances that often separated them in their 6 years of marriage, Vincent's consistent care was a comfort. She texted back, "Landed safely. Heading home now. Talk tomorrow," before the cab rolled into a snow-covered Upper East Side. The streets were tranquil as the snowfall grew heavier, blanketing the roads with about 4 inches of fresh snow, lending an eerie feel to the night. Alexis's cab halted in front of her brownstone, a place steeped in personal history and emotional significance. It had been her grandmother's, passed down to Alexis despite the disputes from other family members. Her grandmother had been adamant. This house must go to Alexis. She needs a place that's truly her own. But as she stepped out into the snowy night, a chill ran down her spine that wasn't from the cold. An unfamiliar BMW was parked in her spot. Paying the cab driver and moving towards her front door, she noticed something amiss, a new doorknob, a changed lock. Her heart sank. Her keys, now useless in her hand, confirmed her fears. As she reached to try her key anyway, the door swung open. "Finally back, huh?" The voice grated on her nerves. Liam, her half-brother, stood in the doorway with a smug look. The same Liam who had been a thorn in her side since their father remarried a decade ago. "What is happening here, Liam?" Alexis's voice was icy, mirroring the chill in the air. "Just come in, I'll explain," he replied, stepping aside. Alexis hesitated, then entered. The apartment she loved was transformed. Cheap, modern furniture replaced the cherished antiques, and the walls where her grandmother's photos once hung were bare, now adorned with pictures of strangers, Liam's family. From deeper within, she heard the cheerful banter of a woman and a child. Liam's wife, Susan, emerged, their young son in tow. "Oh, Alexis, welcome back. We thought we would update the place a bit to make it safer for the kids." Alexis was astounded. "My furniture? My apartment? Who allowed this?" "It was Mom's idea. We needed more space and you were away. It just made sense," Liam interjected as if it settled the matter. Alexis took out her phone, her face set. "I'm calling the police." "Really? For a family matter?" Liam scoffed. "This stopped being about family the moment you decided to erase every trace of Dad and take over my home without consent," Alexis retorted, her voice sharp as the cold night. "I'm giving you until tomorrow to move out. Expect a notice from my lawyer." Ignoring Susan's pleading look and Liam's protests, Alexis stepped back into the snowy night, the falling snowflakes echoing her turbulent emotions. As she walked away, Liam's shouts faded into the silence of the snow-covered evening. Alexis was in a taxi, barely holding back her tears, as she dialed her stepmother Martha. She had just arrived at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston, a place that felt both comforting and cold. As she stood by the hotel room window, watching the snow blanket the city and people bustling to their destinations, the dark room mirrored her somber mood. After a brief hesitation, she pressed the call button. Martha answered on the third ring. "Well, Alexis, I finally hear from you," she said with her usual pretense of warmth. Alexis's frustration grew. "Why are Liam and Susan in my apartment?" she demanded. Martha's tone was reproachful. "Alexis, stop this hostility. If your father were here, he'd want you to support your family. Don't bring Dad into this," Alexis shot back. "Ever since he passed, you've been trying to edge me out. Now you talk of family?" There was a pause, and then Martha sighed. "You always play the victim, Alexis. Consider Liam, he lost his job." "Why wasn't I told?" Why let them into my apartment without asking me? I tried to contact you. I left a voicemail and emailed you, but you never responded, Martha retorted. Checking her email, Alexis found the vague message. And you're saying I'm moving to Australia? Starting over with Vincent? That's what Liam told me. He talked to your assistant, Martha explained, somewhat flustered. My assistant? Who gave them that right? Alexis's voice was icy. Don't be upset over such trivial things. What matters now is dealing with the situation. Liam has kids. Do you want them out on the streets in the Massachusetts winter? Martha argued. Alexis took a deep breath, recognizing the manipulation. If Liam can't manage, that's on him, not me. How heartless do you think I am? Is this what Dad taught us? Now you talk about values? Alexis laughed bitterly. Have you forgotten what you did after Dad died? Removing his pictures, turning his study into your yoga room? Trying to erase him? That's different, Martha snapped. I was moving on. But you? You're stuck in the past. That's enough, Alexis said, hanging up. Seconds later, her phone rang again. It was Martha. Alexis blocked the call and did the same with Liam's number. Another call came from an unknown number, probably Susan. She ignored it. Contacting the hotel reception, she requested, please do not forward any calls to me tonight. After the call, Alexis sat on the bed, gathering her thoughts for the fight ahead. She needed to talk to her lawyer, check her apartment's current market value, and most importantly, explain everything to Vincent in Australia. Taking another deep breath, she dialed her husband's number. Vincent, are you there? It's late, I know, but something terrible has happened. On the other end, Vincent listened silently, his concern palpable, a stark contrast to Martha and Liam. As Alexis recounted the events, she felt a slight ease. The battle was just beginning, but at least she wasn't alone. Despite the turmoil, Alexis felt a wave of relief knowing she had solid support. Vincent's words echoed in her mind, I support your decision. If you need me, I'll come over right away. Hanging up the phone, she opened her laptop and composed an email to one of the most reputable real estate law firms in Massachusetts. The subject line was direct and clear, seeking legal advice on unlawful occupation. The next morning, Alexis was at the bustling Boston police station explaining her predicament to an officer who looked tired but attentive. So, your half-brother entered your apartment without your permission and even changed the locks. He summarized, a tinge of annoyance in his voice. Yes, it's a clear case of unlawful entry, Alexis replied. The officer nodded slowly. Sounds like a family issue. I recommend settling this civilly. Alexis had expected such a response and left the station, the icy morning air biting at her cheeks. Her phone showed several missed calls, likely from Susan, which she chose to ignore. Instead, she dialed another number. This is Edwards' law firm. I have an appointment with Mr. Arthur Edwards. I'm Alexis Williams. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in the reception area of a high-rise building in Midtown. Arthur Edwards, a lawyer known for his keen insight and sharp gaze, greeted her. I understand your situation, he said, reviewing the documents she provided. Could you show me the documents related to your father's estate? Edwards asked. Alexis handed over the documents detailing the estate division after her father's death, her agreement with her stepmother, and, crucially, her grandmother's will. As your grandmother intended to leave this apartment solely to you, Edwards remarked as he read the will, even against the objections of other heirs. He then picked up another document, his expression shifting. This is intriguing, he noted, examining the record of her stepmother's financial transactions. Your stepmother has been withdrawing funds regularly from the estate. However, the uses of these funds are suspicious. What do you mean? Alexis asked, leaning forward. There are records of transfers to multiple offshore accounts. Many of these transactions should have required your consent. Alexis's anger flared. I never gave my consent. I thought so, Edwards said, picking up a pen. This is more than just unlawful entry. There's a high possibility of embezzlement, and your half-brother's sudden financial distress might be connected. We need to investigate. First, Let's apply for a temporary restraining order and legally demand their eviction from your apartment. Simultaneously, we'll start a detailed investigation into your stepmother's financial transactions. Alexis nodded. What about the costs? The retainer fee is $95,000. However, if embezzlement is proven, there's a high likelihood of recovering a much larger amount. Alexis promptly wrote a check. As she was leaving, Edwards called out, "One more thing. Your stepmother and your half-brother probably aren't expecting you to take legal action. That element of surprise is our advantage." Alexis managed a slight smile. I understand. Leaving the office, she headed to her next appointment with Willie, a top Boston real estate agent and her college classmate. Alexis, it's been a while. Willie greeted her warmly. What's happened? You made such a sudden appointment. Alexis briefly explained the situation. Willie's expression brightened. The timing couldn't be better. The real estate value in your district has significantly increased over the past 3 years. And just last week, a major investment fund inquired about buying properties in the area. Alexis paused for a moment before starting the process of selling her apartment, despite it being listed above the market value. She knew buyers were still interested. Taking a deep breath, she contemplated the fate of the current tenants, aware that they were facing eviction due to legal actions already set in motion. Later that day, from her hotel room, Alexis video called her friend Vincent in Australia. His reassuring voice helped solidify her resolve. You're making the right decision, Vincent encouraged. Soon after their call, a new message popped up from Edwards' law firm. They had uncovered significant new details about her stepmother's financial dealings and needed to meet first thing in the morning. These are significant findings, Alexis typed back, a mix of anticipation and dread settling in. She lay down, the weight of the upcoming battle urging her to rest. As she drifted off, snow began to fall outside her window, casting a cleansing calm over the city. The next morning, the conference room at Edwards' law firm was bathed in the soft light of dawn. Documents detailing years of financial mismanagement by her stepmother, Martha, covered the table. We've thoroughly investigated her activities over the past 6 years since your father passed away, Edwards explained gravely. Martha started transferring small amounts initially, but it quickly escalated to over $4 million, much of it without your knowledge. Alexis's heart raced as she learned that some of this money had been funneled into Liam's account. Was Liam involved? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It appears so, Edwards confirmed. His recent unemployment was due to an embezzlement scandal at his previous company. We've verified this with his former employer. Silence filled the room as Alexis processed the revelations. Looking out the window, she gathered her thoughts before making her decision. I want everything brought to light, including filing criminal charges, she declared firmly. Understood, Edwards nodded. Let's start by addressing the unlawful occupation of your apartment. An hour later, Alexis was outside her apartment, waiting as the locksmith put the finishing touches on the new locks. She checked her phone. Edwards' assistant confirmed everything was set. The police are ready to assist if needed, the assistant informed her. Once inside, the sounds of a television came from the living room. Leave, Alexis stated calmly as Liam and Susan turned in surprise. Liam, how did you get in? Liam stood, confused and defensive. This is my house. You have 2 weeks to vacate, or I'll take legal action. That's impossible, Susan exclaimed, concern for her children evident in her voice. Susan, did you know Liam was fired for embezzlement? And Martha has siphoned over $4 million from my father's estate, some of which went into your account, Alexis revealed, turning the confrontation up a notch. That's a lie. Liam protested loudly. I have all the evidence, Alexis countered, holding her ground as she displayed the bank records and transaction histories on her phone. Susan's face shifted from confusion to shock as she turned to Liam. Is this true, Liam? It's not what it looks like, Liam stuttered, but the damage was done. I'm taking the kids to my parents. I can't stay with a liar, Susan declared, her decision resolute as she began to pack. What have you done? Liam glared at Alexis, anger and betrayal written across his face. I just told her the truth about what you and Martha have been up to, Alexis responded calmly, unyielding. You have 2 weeks. Martha will be arrested tomorrow for embezzlement. As Susan returned, carrying one of their children, Liam's face paled at the reality closing in around him. The police were already moving forward, and his role as an accomplice would soon be under investigation. The sound of packing continued in the background, marking the end of an era of deceit. When Alexis confronted Liam, her voice shaking slightly, she demanded to know why he had tampered with her apartment locks. Liam didn't turn to face her as he explained. It was Mom's idea. She even forged your signature to authorize the change. The contractor didn't question it. After all, who would suspect a mother of trying to usurp her own daughter's property? Liam's words revealed a chilling strategy. She wanted to trap you into giving up your control over the inheritance. That way, the embezzlement she was involved in would never see the light of day. With those heavy words hanging in the air, Liam walked away. Later that night, Alexis sat alone in the dim light of the hotel bar, nursing a whiskey. On the television, the news of Martha's arrest played. The defendant, investment banker Miss Alexis Williams, identified the fraud and alerted the authorities, uncovering years of embezzlement, the newscaster reported. As the bartender reached to change the channel, Alexis stopped him. Leave it, please. She watched a complex mix of relief and vindication in her eyes as images of Martha in handcuffs filled the screen. Her phone buzzed with a message from Vincent. I'm flying back tomorrow. Let's get through this together. Alexis managed a faint smile. Indeed, this marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another in her life. The following morning's newspaper headline read, The Vincent Case, Betrayal in High Society for $1 million embezzlement, a family torn by greed. Alexis absorbed the words, then quietly closed the newspaper as a new day dawned. 3 years later, the digital edition of the Massachusetts Times reported, Martha Vincent sentenced to 8 years in $4 million embezzlement case, appeal denied. Another tab on her screen showed a different story. Former finance elite starts new life at a used car dealership in Delaware, embezzlement accomplice on path to rehabilitation. Vincent, who had quietly entered the room, asked, Still care about it? Alexis replied, It's not that I care. I'm just making sure that my decision was right. Life buzzed outside her office in Australia, where she had moved to start anew, now heading Merrill Lynch's Asia division, a significant leap in her career. Her phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. I've completed a rehabilitation program and am living honestly now. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just wanted you to know. Liam, Vincent noticed her hesitation. Going to reply? No, Alexis said resolutely. That chapter is over. That night, on her balcony overlooking the sparkling Australian skyline, Alexis enjoyed a glass of wine alone. Another letter arrived from Martha, now claiming she had terminal cancer with only 7 months left. Vincent, knowing her struggle, said, It might be different this time. Alexis's expression wavered under the moonlight, but only for a moment. It doesn't change the past. Just because she's dying doesn't erase what she did. I know, Vincent acknowledged. I just wanted you to know you have a choice. Indeed, Alexis had choices. She could meet Martha one last time, perhaps attempt reconciliation. But was it necessary? The next morning, Alexis arrived at the office earlier than usual. Her secretary, Judy, handed her an envelope from Susan. Inside, a recent photo of Susan and her son, now grown and in school. On the back, a brief note read, Thank you for telling me the truth back then. Alexis placed the photo in her drawer. Susan had moved on. Liam was confronting his past, and Alexis, amidst new beginnings, continued to forge her path forward. Over the past 3 years, Alexis has undergone a profound transformation. One evening, she made a decisive move that marked a clear step forward in her journey. She chose to return a letter from Martha, unopened, attaching a brief note that read, I am no longer a part of your story. Vincent, ever the supportive friend, questioned her decision with a gentle, Are you sure? Yes, Alexis affirmed, her voice steady. This is the path I've chosen. That weekend, The pair found themselves enjoying brunch on the sunny shores of Sentosa Island. The warm sea breeze fluttered around them as if to signal the start of a new chapter. It was there, amidst the serene landscape, that Alexis shared a new vision with Vincent. "I have an idea for a new project," she began, her eyes reflecting a mix of excitement and resolve. "I'm thinking of starting a foundation to support victims of financial crimes." Vincent's response was immediate, his eyes lighting up. "That's a wonderful idea." "Yes, I want to use what I've gone through to help others," Alexis continued. The shadows of her past experiences had faded, replaced by the strength and clarity of her newfound purpose. Her face showed no traces of the past's burdens, only the vigor to move forward and embrace a fresh mission. Her story, it seemed, was just beginning anew. This was not just a new chapter in her life, but an entirely new volume, where her past trials would fuel her commitment to aid those facing challenges similar to what she had overcome. My name is Helen, and my journey through life has been anything but ordinary. I grew up in a typical family setup with my mom, dad, and two younger siblings, Angela and Charles. My father was an engineer, and my mother was a teacher. We lived a comfortable, albeit modest life, where the basics were covered and our needs met. However, during my sophomore year of college, our world turned upside down. I was deeply immersed in my computer programming studies, often pulling all-nighters to maintain my scholarship, when we received devastating news. My father suffered a heart attack at work and passed away before I could even reach the hospital. In the months that followed, our family struggled to adjust. My mother took on additional shifts at school and started cleaning houses on weekends to make ends meet. Witnessing her exhaustion night after night, I knew I had to take responsibility. Being the eldest, I moved back home to support Angela, who was just entering high school, and Charles, who was still in middle school. Between attending classes, I managed household duties, cooked meals, and helped with homework. It was a challenging period, juggling academic responsibilities with family obligations, but I had no other choice. College transformed from merely an academic pursuit to a lifeline for a better future for my family. I dedicated myself to mastering programming, spending extra hours in the lab, and undertaking additional projects to enhance my skills. It was during this time that I met Larry, a fellow programming enthusiast. He proposed we collaborate on a final project, a user-friendly home automation app designed not just for tech enthusiasts, but for everyday people. We spent countless days and nights coding, testing, and refining our prototype. By our senior year, our app had started to gain significant attention. One afternoon, as I returned from class, Angela handed me a message. "Some guy from Tech Horizon called about your app. They're interested in discussing acquisition opportunities," she said. That message signaled the beginning of a new chapter. After extensive negotiations, which were mostly a blur, Larry and I sold our app for a whopping $2 million. The moment the transaction was confirmed, I was overcome with emotion, shedding tears of relief and joy. The first thing I did was ensure my mother could retire from her second job. Despite her protests, I reassured her, showing her my bank account balance. "The bills are taken care of," I insisted. Her eyes widened, filled with tears of disbelief and gratitude. With the financial security from the sale, I renovated our family home, equipping it with a state-of-the-art smart home system I had custom designed. "Just speak your needs, and the house responds," I explained to my mom, demonstrating how the lights, temperature, music, and even security systems worked seamlessly through voice commands. As she watched in awe, the environment adjusting with just a few words, she murmured, "This is like magic." I smiled, correcting her gently, "It's technology, Mom. And I've covered everything, internet, maintenance, all of it. Just enjoy it." For the first time since my father's passing, I saw genuine relaxation in my mom's expression. She no longer had to manage everything on her own. Simple voice commands now took care of the vacuuming, and dinner was on its way to being prepared. This new chapter wasn't just about technological innovation. It was about restoring peace and simplicity to the family life that had once been disrupted by tragedy. After graduation, Larry and I chose different paths. While Larry invested his portion of our joint savings into a gaming startup, I ventured into the world of smart home technology by founding my own company. The initial phase was grueling, with long hours and constant stress. The fear of failure was real, especially since many startups did not survive their first year. However, the thought of failing was not an option for me as my family depended on me. Over time, my company began to flourish. Within 3 years, we expanded to 21 employees and developed several successful products, including an advanced integrated smart home system. This system was an evolution of the initial project Larry and I had begun. I moved into a modest apartment downtown near my office and bought a reliable, unassuming car. My earnings were primarily reinvested into the business or went towards supporting my family. I set up automatic payments to ensure my mother, Angela, and Charles had everything they needed. Life became more routine, and I started to enjoy the challenges of running a tech company. My family adapted to the new financial stability, each in their way. My mother, having worked tirelessly for years, relished her new role as a housewife. She would excitedly show me the latest changes to her home decor or a new recipe she had tried during my weekly visits. However, Angela and Charles struggled more with the transition. Both started college, but dropped out within a year. When I expressed my concerns, Charles pointed out that not everyone aspired to be a workaholic. His words stung, but I restrained myself and instead provided them with apartments and a monthly stipend of $3,000 each, plus covering their rent, to give them time to find their footing. As time passed, Angela and Charles remained stagnant. Angela hopped between retail jobs, while Charles mostly played video games and slept in. At our monthly dinners, I urged them to seek stable employment, reminding them that I couldn't support them indefinitely, especially once I started my own family. They would agree to look for jobs, but nothing changed. I realized that by making life too easy for them, I inadvertently discouraged their independence. Meanwhile, my mother began hinting at wanting a country house for her 60th birthday, casually showing me listings of beautiful homes ideal for summer gatherings. While I responded politely, I made no promises, though she seemed to interpret my non-committal replies as encouragement. One early spring evening, as I sat in my apartment going through work emails, I pondered the complexities of family dynamics and financial responsibilities. The journey of building my business and supporting my family was filled with both rewards and challenges, shaping not just my career but also my relationships with those closest to me. As I realized that my mother's 60th birthday was only a month away, I felt a surge of inspiration to organize something truly memorable for her. That evening, I set up a group chat with my siblings, Angela and Charles, and shared my idea of celebrating at a high-end restaurant. I asked if they were on board. Angela replied almost immediately, expressing concerns about the cost, while Charles mentioned he had a gaming tournament that weekend but would attend. Their typical responses didn't surprise me, but they did make me sigh with a mix of disappointment and resolve. "Fine, I'll handle everything," I texted back. Over the next few weeks, I poured my energy into planning the perfect birthday bash. I chose the city's most prestigious restaurant, known for its exquisite harbor views and private dining area. I carefully selected a menu featuring all of Mom's favorite dishes and ordered a custom-made cake. But the highlight was arranging for Mom's cousins from New Mexico and her college roommate from Miami to come. Knowing how much she missed them, I covered their travel and accommodation expenses. The anticipation of her reaction to these reunions added excitement to my meticulous preparations. The celebration day was a picture of perfection. The restaurant was beautifully decorated, the candlelit ambience adding a warm glow to the private room. Mom's reaction upon seeing her old friends was worth every effort. Her joyous surprise was a clear sign that the evening was special. As the night unfolded, we enjoyed delicious food and shared laughter over stories from Mom's past, including some hilarious episodes recounted by her colleagues and the nostalgic family photos her cousins brought. Watching Mom so happy made the extensive planning feel worthwhile. When it was time for presents, Charles presented a digital photo frame, explaining that he and Angela had loaded it with family pictures. Mom was visibly moved by their gift. I knew the frame was inexpensive and that Angela probably did most of the work, but Mom's genuine delight was what mattered. Then it was my turn. I stood with a glass in hand, ready to highlight the effort I'd put into the evening. Mom, for your birthday, I wanted to create something meaningful. So, I planned this party and flew in Aunt Samantha, Uncle Tyler, and Deborah to ensure this night was filled with love and joy. All of this celebration in the city's best restaurant surrounded by loved ones, is my gift to you. I expected an emotional thank you, but instead, Mom's expression shifted from joy to displeasure. A heavy silence fell as she stood up, her chair scraping loudly. I appreciate the thoughts from Angela and Charles, she began, her tone sharp. But I am disappointed that my eldest thinks this is a gift. It's just a party, Helen. What I wanted, as I've mentioned, was the country house. I've told everyone that's what you'd give me today. The room fell into an uneasy quiet, whispers circulating among the guests. I was stunned, my heart sinking. Mom, I never promised a house. This party, flying everyone in, was my gift to you, planned with love and care. I replied, trying to keep composed. Mom's response, sharp and dismissive, echoed in the now tense room. Anyone can organize a dinner, Helen. That's not a real gift. The misunderstanding was clear, and as murmurs grew around us, I felt a mix of frustration and sadness. Despite my efforts to create a memorable night, it seemed overshadowed by unmet expectations I hadn't even known were set. This moment was a stark reminder of the complex dynamics that often lay under the surface of familial relationships. The confrontation at the party left me stunned and deeply hurt. As my mother hissed accusations of selfishness, claiming I had embarrassed her in front of her friends for not gifting her a house, the room filled with heavy silence. Her words cut deep, especially after all I had invested in organizing this special event for her. I've put all my resources into my business, I tried to explain, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. But before I could finish, she threw her napkin at me, her words biting. You're clueless and stupid. I don't want you here. You've ruined everything. Get out. The guests' faces registered shock and disbelief, yet Angela and Charles sat frozen, offering no words of support. Feeling isolated and overwhelmed, I muttered a feeble fine, grabbed my purse and walked out, my legs shaking so violently I nearly stumbled. Once outside, my hands trembled too much to even unlock my car. Defeated, I called a taxi, collapsing into the back seat where I finally allowed the tears to flow. That night, I turned off my phone to shut out the world. As I lay on my couch, I felt a profound sense of disillusionment wash over me. How could my family treat me this way after all I had done for them? It was as if my sacrifices and efforts meant nothing. The next morning, when I turned on my phone, it was flooded with messages and missed calls. Angela and Charles blamed me, saying I should have just given Mom what she wanted. Mom herself dared to say she would forgive me if I bought her the country house, even attaching a listing to a lavish $800,000 property. I was dumbfounded by their entitlement. In a moment of frustration, I hurled my phone across the room, narrowly missing the window. Are they serious? I shouted into the silence of my apartment. For the next few days, I was a ghost of myself at work, distracted and disheartened. One evening, alone in the office, I began to tally up everything I had contributed financially to my family since my father's death. The monthly allowances, rent, utilities, and countless other expenses added up to over $12,000 each month. It dawned on me that my generosity might have done more harm than good. Angela was 28 and Charles 26. They should have been building their lives, yet they relied on me as a safety net, doing just enough to get by. Mom had shifted from gratitude to entitlement, seeing my support not as a gift but as a do-right. The smart home system I had installed for her, once a marvel, was now just another expectation. This realization was a painful epiphany. I had been enabling their dependency, not fostering their independence. They had no reason to strive for more when I was there to cushion every fall. It was clear that something had to change. I needed to redefine the boundaries of my support, not just for my financial health, but for their personal growth as well. As difficult as it would be, I knew that for us all to thrive truly, they needed to learn to stand on their own. At that moment, I decided it was time for a drastic change. Opening my laptop, I composed an email to my mother. It was direct and uncompromising. I have given serious thought to what occurred at your birthday celebration. I want to be clear that I will not be purchasing a country house for you. Not now, not ever. This topic is off the table. Furthermore, I am ending all financial support immediately. You will need to manage on your own from this point forward. I sent the email before I could second-guess my decision. Next, I called the internet provider and canceled the service to my mother's house. Without the internet, the smart home system, which included automatic blinds, voice-activated appliances, and a security system, would cease to function. It all depended on a connection to my company's servers. One by one, I then canceled all automatic transfers to my family's accounts and removed myself as the responsible party for the utility payments at my mother's house. Each action felt like lifting a heavy burden off my shoulders. The backlash was swift and severe. My phone rang incessantly. When I blocked their numbers, they resorted to showing up at my apartment building. "Miss Marshall, your mother is here again." The building's concierge would inform me. I instructed him not to let her up and emailed him photos of my family, directing him to deny them entry under any circumstances. It was a harsh measure, but necessary. I altered my daily routes and became extra vigilant about my privacy. Despite the emotional turmoil, part of me felt liberated, free from the constant pressure and demands of my family for the first time in many years. About a week later, I received a call from Aunt Samantha. I hesitated, suspecting another manipulation, but curiosity got the better of me. "Helen, I just wanted to check on you," she began, her voice conveying concern. She disagreed with how my mother had treated me, offering a much-needed perspective that affirmed my decisions. Grateful for her understanding, I asked how everyone was coping. Samantha explained that without the internet, all the smart technology in my mother's house had stopped working. A local company couldn't fix it as the tech was proprietary. My mother had no choice but to sell the equipment at a loss and replace it with regular appliances, which was an expensive ordeal. Curious, I asked about Angela and Charles. Samantha shared that they had moved back with my mother, unable to afford their apartments, but both were now working full-time. This news was a silver lining. It seemed that my tough love approach might be fostering some independence after all. I hung up feeling a mix of relief and vindication. Sitting on my balcony that evening, wine glass in hand, I watched the city lights flicker to life as dusk enveloped the skyline. I realized how long I had carried my family's needs and problems, neglecting my freedom and peace. There was guilt, undoubtedly, but beneath it was profound relief. In the months that followed, I immersed myself in work, launched a new product line, and even started seeing someone new. Life felt different, lighter, and filled with possibilities. The break from my family had not only given me a chance to focus on my own life, but had also, surprisingly, propelled them towards taking responsibility for theirs. As difficult as the decision had been, it was proving to be the right one. Despite severing financial ties with my family, I hadn't completely isolated myself from news about them. Aunt Samantha, the occasional bearer of updates, provided me with insights that I both dreaded and anticipated. During one call, she mentioned that Angela and Charles had sold the luxury cars I had bought them, a Mercedes and a sporty convertible. It wasn't surprising. They probably needed the cash. "Are they both working full-time now?" I inquired. Samantha confirmed that Charles was employed at an electronics store in the mall, and Angela had secured a stable job at a boutique. However, they were still living with Mom, unable to afford places of their own. A twinge of guilt surfaced, but I quickly reminded myself that this was necessary for their growth. They needed to stand on their own, not remain in perpetual dependence. Curious, I asked about Mom. Samantha's response made me brace myself. "She's been talking about suing you for promised gifts and financial abandonment." My heart skipped a beat at the absurdity, but thankfully, Angela and Charles had dissuaded her, pointing out the futility and potential waste of money. The next day at work, my assistant informed me that Angela was at the office, insisting on seeing me. My stomach tightened. "What does she want?" I asked, though I feared I already knew. She wouldn't say, just that it's urgent. I instructed my assistant to tell her I was unavailable, buried in meetings all day. Checking the security footage later, I saw Angela had changed from her usual designer attire to simple jeans and a plain sweater. She argued briefly with the receptionist before leaving. The sight sparked a fleeting pang of regret, but I steeled myself against it. Yielding now would only revert us back to our old, unhealthy dynamics. That evening, I met my boyfriend Frank for dinner. He was a software developer I'd met at a tech conference, intelligent and ambitious, yet his warmth balanced my sometimes clinical approach to life. Over dinner, I shared the day's events and Aunt Samantha's updates. Frank listened intently, then asked, "Do you think you made the right call, cutting them off completely?" I pondered his question, reflecting on the disrespect and entitlement I had endured. "They didn't respect me, Frank. They saw me as an ATM, not a person with feelings and limits. My mother threw a napkin at me in a public restaurant because I wouldn't buy her a house." He nodded in agreement, understanding the extremity of their actions. "Sometimes I do feel sorry for them," I confessed, especially when I hear they're struggling. "But then I remember how they treated me, and I know I made the right decision." Frank reached across the table, offering his hand in support. "For what it's worth, I think you did too. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones." In the weeks that followed, I poured my energy into my company. We were developing a new commercial application for my smart home technology, aiming to revolutionize office buildings and retail spaces. The project consumed me in the best way possible, providing a fulfilling distraction from family woes. I also spent more time with Frank, whose understanding and support became invaluable. Though he grew up in a close-knit family and occasionally struggled to understand my complete break from mine, he never judged me. Over the next month, messages from Angela and even Charles trickled in, but I approached them with a new perspective, fortified by my decisions and the new life I was building with Frank's support. Having decided to sever financial ties with my family, I felt a mixture of relief and inevitable sadness. The incoming messages from Angela and Charles piled up, but I deleted them without opening them. Whether they sought reconciliation, forgiveness, or simply more money, I wasn't ready to engage. Perhaps I never would be. Aunt Samantha kept me updated. She mentioned that my mother had started a part-time job as a receptionist to supplement her income, her first real job in years. Mom complained incessantly about having to work at her age. "She's 60, I remarked during one of our calls, pointing out that many people work well into their 60s and 70s. "I know that, and you know that, but your mother seems to think she's entitled to retire early on someone else's dime," Samantha replied. Her words hit home, underscoring the pervasive sense of entitlement that had strained our family dynamics. This entitlement was the root of all our problems. My family had grown accustomed to living off my success, my money, my constant support, none of which they had earned, yet all of which they felt entitled to. By cutting them off, I hadn't just forced them to stand on their own financially, I had challenged their deep-seated belief that they deserved to be taken care of simply because we were related. 7 months after the birthday party debacle, I encountered Charles in a coffee shop near my office. He looked different, his hair was cut short, and he wore a store uniform with a name tag. Our eyes met, and there was a brief, awkward pause before he acknowledged me with a small nod and quickly turned away. I left the shop silently. There was nothing to say. Any words would have felt hollow. That evening, as I looked through old family photos from before our father passed away, before money and expectations had complicated our relationships, I saw our genuine smiles, the simple joy of being together. It made me wonder if we could ever return to something resembling that version of our family. Probably not, I admitted to myself. Too much had happened, too many hurtful words had been exchanged. Yet, strangely, I was at peace with this realization. I had built a fulfilling life for myself, a thriving company, a promising relationship, and friendships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. This new chapter, marked by independence and personal growth, felt right. For the first time in years, I experienced true freedom, freedom from obligation, freedom from guilt, and freedom from the exhausting responsibility of supporting 3 adults who should have been capable of supporting themselves. This newfound independence wasn't just about setting boundaries with my family. It was about rediscovering who I was when I wasn't defined by those obligations. As difficult as the journey had been, it was shaping me into someone stronger, more confident, and genuinely content. I'm Karen. Growing up, I appear to have everything a child could wish for. We lived in a large, immaculately kept house in the suburbs, thanks to my mom who was dedicated to keeping our home spotless. My dad was a high-flying engineering executive, and my younger brother Richard and I attended the most prestigious private school in the area. Despite all the material wealth and prestige, something crucial was missing in my life: my parents' genuine love and attention. Richard was born when I was just a few years old, and it quickly became apparent that he was the family's golden boy. My parents adored him, celebrating every milestone and achievement as if he were a prodigy. Meanwhile, I consistently brought home straight A's, but barely received a nod of acknowledgement. I learned early on that academic excellence couldn't compete with Richard's athletic prowess in our parents' eyes. From the age of 6, Richard played hockey, and my parents were utterly devoted to his success. They spent lavishly on the best equipment, private coaching, and elite training camps, all in the hopes of him becoming a hockey star. They would boast to anyone who would listen about Richard's potential, predicting he would be the next big name in the sport. Though I loved Richard, he was a good kid. It was hard not to feel overshadowed and, at times, resentful. I couldn't help feeling a sting of jealousy as I watched him lace up his expensive skates while I was still making do with hand-me-downs. As time went on, my feelings of being the overlooked child only deepened. I decided to focus on carving out my niche. I worked hard in school and earned a spot at a prestigious college to study interior design, a subject I was passionate about. The college offered a fresh start, a chance to step out from Richard's shadow and pursue something that was entirely my own. College life was liberating. I immersed myself in my studies and the new experiences around me. Being away from home lightened the emotional load I had carried for years. I rarely called home, and when I did, the conversations were brief and superficial. It wasn't until my junior year that I received a real update about home. During one of our infrequent calls, my mom complained about Richard's hockey coach, who she felt was underutilizing him. Despite their considerable investments in his hockey career, he was spending more time on the bench than on the ice. Frustrated, they had even tried to intervene by speaking with the coach and team owner, but to no avail. Time flew by, and soon I was graduating. At the ceremony, as I scanned the crowd for my family, I found them easily. They were the ones who seemed distracted, checking their phones constantly. Even on one of the biggest days of my life, I felt like an afterthought compared to Richard's sports engagements. As I moved forward, forging my path became not just a desire, but a necessity. I was determined to make a name for myself, independent of the family dynamic that had so often made me feel like a secondary character in my own story. I approached my family, diploma in hand, and a beaming smile across my face. "Congrats, sweetie," my dad offered with a quick hug. "Listen, we can't stay long. Richard has a big game tonight, and we promised we'd be there early to discuss strategies with his coach." I watched them rush off, my graduation gown suddenly feeling like a burden draped over my shoulders. It was the same old story, just a different day. A few months later, I had settled into my new apartment and was diving into my dream job as an interior designer. I was completely in love with every aspect of my work: the creativity, the challenges, and the sheer joy of transforming spaces according to my vision. One evening, while I was sketching out ideas for a client, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Richard's contract wasn't renewed. He's devastated. Your father is looking for an agent to find him a new team. Please call your brother. He won't talk to anyone. A whirlwind of emotions swept through me. Part of me felt sympathy for Richard. I knew how much hockey meant to him. But another part of me, which I wasn't proud of, felt a slight satisfaction. Perhaps now my parents would see there was more to life than hockey. I didn't call Richard that night or the next. I told myself I was too busy, but deep down, I knew I was avoiding the family drama. It was simpler to focus on my own life and the career I had always dreamed of. Weeks turned into months, and through occasional updates from my parents, I learned about Richard's relentless search for a new team, the agents, the tryouts, and the constant setbacks. However, it all seemed distant to me, like news from another world. I immersed myself deeper into my work, taking on more clients and pushing my creative limits. My designs were gaining attention, and I was building a respectable reputation in the field. Just as I had settled into focusing solely on my career, I met Brian at a client's housewarming party. He was the charming guy who accidentally spilled red wine on the pristine white carpet I had chosen. As we tackled the stain together, we struck up a conversation and soon found ourselves engrossed in our little world for the entire evening. Our relationship flourished rapidly, and within 7 months, we were inseparable. 3 years into our relationship, as we celebrated my 27th birthday with a dinner and a stroll through the park, Brian suddenly dropped to one knee and presented a small velvet box. As he placed the beautiful ring on my finger, I was overwhelmed with joy. However, a familiar pang of anxiety hit me. How would my parents react? Would they even care? Surprisingly, when I called to share the news, my parents expressed genuine excitement. They insisted on meeting Brian immediately and even offered to host a dinner for us. Cautiously optimistic, we drove to my childhood home that weekend. The dinner began well, with my parents welcoming Brian warmly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly the center of attention. However, as we began the main course, the conversation inevitably shifted. "So, Brian," my dad began, refilling his wine glass, "did Karen tell you about her brother Richard? He's quite the hockey player, you know." My heart sank as my parents dove into a detailed account of Richard's latest attempts to revive his hockey career. Brian, bless him, tried several times to steer the conversation back to our engagement. Attempting to steer the conversation back to our engagement during the dinner felt like trying to halt a speeding train, but despite the inevitable detour into Richard's sports career, the evening concluded on a high note. My parents took care of the dinner bill and warmly gave us their blessings. As we prepared to leave, my mom hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. Let's get together soon to start planning, okay?" In the weeks that followed, I found myself swept up in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. To my surprise, my mom became an eager participant in the planning process. We would meet over coffee to discuss color schemes, spend weekends touring venues, and even share a tearful moment when I tried on my wedding gown. My dad also became involved. He took on paying for half of the wedding costs and negotiated with Brian's parents as if it were a major business transaction. One evening, I found him scrutinizing seating charts with a focus I had previously only seen him apply to Richard's hockey strategies. "Dad," I said, surprised, "you don't have to worry about the seating arrangements. We can handle that." He looked up at me, a gentle smile on his face, and replied, "Nonsense, pumpkin. This is your big day. I want everything to be perfect." A warmth spread through my heart. This was what I had always longed for, to feel like I truly mattered to my parents, to be the center of their attention and affection. One sunny afternoon, I sat at my parents' dining room table surrounded by color swatches and floral catalogs. Mom and Brian's mother, Rebecca, were deep in debate over the choice of napkin colors. "I'm telling you, cream is the way to go," my mom insisted, brandishing a swatch like a flag. "It's classic, elegant, and goes with everything." Rebecca, however, was adamant. "But blush would tie in so beautifully with the bridesmaids' dresses." "Karen, what do you think?" I couldn't help but smile. Honestly, I think either would look lovely. Both women looked at me as if I had grown a second head. Karen, dear, my mom said, patting my hand, this is your special day. Every detail matters. I had to suppress a chuckle. Who would have thought I'd ever see my mother so invested in anything related to me? It was almost comical. The great napkin debate was followed by a spirited discussion about the wedding music. Dad and Paul, Brian's father, nearly clashed over whether to have a live band or a DJ. Brian and I exchanged amused glances. Maybe we could have both, I suggested. A band for the ceremony and dinner, and a DJ for the dance party afterward. Both men looked at me with newfound respect. Now that's using your noggin, Dad said proudly.
See, Paul?
My girls got it all figured out. But even as I reveled in this newfound parental attention, reality had a way of intruding. Just as we were finalizing venue details, my mom's phone buzzed with a new message. Her face lit up as she read it. Oh, this is wonderful news. Richard's got a tryout with a team in Calgary next week, she announced. And just like that, the spell was broken. That's great, I managed to say, keeping the disappointment from my voice. We'll need to reschedule our cake tasting, Mom said, already busy typing on her phone. Your father and I need to fly out with Richard. This could be his big break. This pattern repeated over the next few weeks. For every wedding plan we managed to secure, there was a Richard-related interruption. Venue walkthroughs were postponed due to Richard's crucial training sessions, and meetings with the florist were abbreviated when my parents had to rush Richard to a last-minute scout interview. One evening, as Brian and I were reviewing the guest list, the weight of it all came crashing down on me. I sobbed into Brian's shoulder, bewildered and hurt. I don't get it, I cried. They're spending thousands on flights and hotels for Richard's hockey dreams. As the days leading up to our wedding flew by, filled with last-minute preparations and excitement, my anticipation grew. The venue was idyllic, my floral arrangements were all set, and my wedding dress fit as if it were made just for me. Everything seemed perfect until a phone call from my mother a week before the big day brought everything to a screeching halt. Karen, honey, my mom's voice came through tense and worried. There's something we need to discuss. Your father has to go on an urgent business trip, and we might have to push the rehearsal dinner to another day, and possibly the wedding date as well. My heart sank, and a cold chill ran through me. Mom, are you serious? I managed to stammer, my voice a mix of disbelief and frustration. The wedding is just a week away. We can't possibly postpone it now. What about all our plans, our guests, the vendors? I know it's a lot to take in, and I'm sorry, dear. But you know how important your father's job is. And I need to support him, she replied, her voice filled with regret. I ended the call, feeling numb and adrift, my dream day crumbling before my eyes. Later, as I sat in our bedroom, tears streaming down my face, Brian found me. I told him everything, my voice breaking with every word. Together, we spent hours trying to find a solution. Could we delay the wedding? What would be the consequences? Could we manage without my parents? Nothing seemed to make sense. As night fell, I tried to distract myself by scrolling through social media, but instead, I stumbled upon a post from my brother Richard that turned my disappointment into anger. USA, here I come. Can't wait to show these USA clubs what real hockey looks like. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for always having my back. This is going to be my big break. It hit me then there was no business trip. My parents were planning to travel across the globe for Richard's hockey career, putting his dreams ahead of my wedding. Shaking, I dialed Richard's number, each ring echoing in the silent room. Hey sis, Richard answered cheerfully, oblivious to my turmoil. Richard, I just saw your post. What's this about USA hockey tryout? I asked, struggling to keep my voice even. Oh man, it's amazing, he exclaimed. Mom and Dad are helping me out big time. They're covering everything, the flights, my agent, even a fancy hotel. Hearing the enthusiasm in his voice while my world was falling apart was too much. I realized then how much I had tried to be more understanding and more mature, but at what cost? My happiness was always the compromise. This realization, painful and sharp, made me wonder about the true cost of family expectations and where my desires fit into the family equation. When I found out that my family was planning to accompany Richard to his hockey tryouts in the USA, the news came as a shock, especially since they intended to leave on the very day of my wedding. I confronted Richard, anxious about his departure date, and my fears were confirmed when he casually mentioned they were leaving next Friday. Next Friday? I echoed, my voice barely hiding my dismay. But Richard, that's the day of my wedding. He paused for a moment before replying with a laugh. Right, I forgot. But, weddings can be rescheduled. This tryout could kickstart my career. I was astounded. Reschedule my wedding? Richard, it's one of the most important days of my life. How can you ask that of me? His response was dismissive. Karen, I have to think about my future. Your wedding is just one day, but this tryout could be my big break. I felt the old wounds of being second to Richard's ambitions reopen with a vengeance. Richard, do you realize how often I've been pushed aside for your career? Our parents have always put you first, and now you expect me to postpone my wedding. He was unmoved. It's not my fault our parents see my potential. Don't blame me, blame the situation. His lack of empathy was staggering. You're 24, Richard. Shouldn't you be taking responsibility for your career without mom and dad? He scoffed. Why should I turn down their help? Can't you see you're being selfish here? Desperate, I tried once more. Can't you let just this one day be about me for once? His reply was cold. Sorry, sis. I'm not going to compromise my dreams for your wedding. With that, he ended the call, leaving me in stunned silence. Betrayed and deeply hurt, I reflected on the countless times I had been sidelined in favor of Richard's aspirations. The fury and helplessness bubbled inside me, overwhelming my senses. Determined for a confrontation, I drove to my parents' home with Brian, who offered silent support. We arrived to find my parents acting surprised but clearly uneasy. Mom, Dad, I began with newfound resolve as we entered. We need to talk about the wedding and Richard's trip. Their guilty expressions flickered before they attempted to feign ignorance. What about it? Dad asked, trying to sound innocent. I cut him off, no longer holding back. I know everything, Richard told me. You're going to the USA with him. The room fell silent. After a moment, my mother sighed, the facade falling away. Yes, we're planning to go with him. The realization hit hard, but now, armed with the truth, I was ready to stand my ground and demand the consideration I deserved. I stood there, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me, as I finally interrupted my dad's lecture. But once again, you're choosing Richard over me, I said, my voice rising with years of frustration. My wedding, something that's supposed to be one of the most important days of my life, doesn't seem to matter as much as his hockey career. My father's expression turned stern. Karen, you need to understand. This is about Richard's future. He's got talent, and this opportunity could be a turning point for him. We need to support him as a family. I was flabbergasted. Selfish? Really? I countered, incredulously. What about all the times you've missed my important moments, my graduations, my achievements, and now you're willing to miss my wedding too? When has it ever been about me? My mom chimed in, her voice pleading. You're an adult now, Karen. You have your career, your life with Brian. Richard still needs our support. To do what, Mom? To chase a dream that hasn't panned out? He's 24 years old. When will you let him stand on his own? The room fell eerily quiet after my outburst. I took a deep breath, gathering the courage to make a stand. I'm not canceling or postponing the wedding. If you choose not to be there, that's your decision. I'm done putting my life on hold for Richard's dreams. My parents looked at me, shock written all over their faces. My father's voice grew harsh as he retorted, We're paying for half of this wedding. You'll do as we say, or we'll pull our financial support. You can't afford this wedding without us. Beside me, Brian tensed, ready to defend me, but I squeezed his hand, silently signaling him to let me handle this. Actually, Dad, I said, my voice steady despite the tumult inside. Brian and I can manage. We're prepared to cover the costs ourselves if necessary. We'll even pay back every cent you've already spent. The week that followed was a whirlwind. Brian and I pushed forward with the wedding plans, rehearsals, parties, and all the final touches. Despite everything, a small part of me hoped my parents would change their minds and show up to apologize. They didn't. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was clear and the sun shone brightly as if nature itself was celebrating with us. The ceremony was more beautiful than I had ever imagined. I walked down the aisle alone, a symbol of the strength I had found within myself. At the end of the aisle, Brian waited for me, his face alight with love and joy. At that moment, as we exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through all of life's challenges, I knew I had made the right choice. The reception was a joyful blur, laughter, dancing, and celebration. It was filled with friends and family who truly supported and cared for us. The photos captured moments of pure happiness, Brian and I looking into each other's eyes, our friends hoisting us on their shoulders, and everyone laughing as we danced clumsily together. It wasn't until a week after our honeymoon that I received a call from my mother. "Karen, sweetie, we're back from USA. Can we meet? We need to talk." I hesitated, then replied, "No, Mom, I don't think that's a good idea." "But Karen, your brother didn't make the team. He's devastated. He needs his big sister right now." I closed my eyes, the old urge to be the accommodating one wrestling with my newfound resolve. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mom, but it's time for Richard to learn to handle his disappointments without me." After ending the call with my mother, I blocked their numbers. A complex mix of sadness and relief swept through me, marking the end of an emotionally exhausting chapter. The following day, I initiated a transfer of the entire amount my parents had contributed towards our wedding back into their bank account. It was a substantial sum, and Brian and I knew that repaying the loan would take some time, but the sense of liberation it provided felt immensely valuable. A few weeks later, my friend Liv called me, her tone a mix of indignation and disbelief. She informed me that my parents had posted about the wedding on social media, casting me as the ungrateful daughter who heartlessly excluded them from her special day. They portrayed a scene full of sorrow, particularly emphasizing how devastated my father was for not walking me down the aisle. The comments on the post were filled with sympathy from outsiders who knew only this curated side of the story. However, support came from an unexpected quarter, my cousins, aunts, and uncles who knew our family dynamics all too well. They intervened online, sharing their perspectives and highlighting the years of neglect and favoritism I had endured. They called out my parents' actions for what they were, a continuous preference for my brother over anything else, including my significant life events. Although touched by their support, I chose not to engage in the online discourse. That chapter of my life was definitively closed. As months passed, Brian and I settled into a lovely, peaceful rhythm, focusing on our careers, traveling, and planning for the future we were building together. Our happiness only multiplied when we discovered we were expecting our first child. This joy was pure, untarnished by any family drama. Occasionally, snippets about Richard and my parents would filter through the family grapevine. After his failed hockey career, Richard had started drinking heavily, and my parents were now in a frantic mode, trying to salvage him by shuttling him from one therapist to another. While a part of me felt a pang of sympathy for the turmoil they were in, a direct result of their long-standing favoritism and enabling, a larger part of me recognized that these were not my burdens to shoulder. Sitting in the nursery that Brian and I had lovingly prepared, hand resting on my growing belly, I had a profound realization. The family I had always yearned for, the love and support I had craved, were finally coming to fruition. I was actively creating that nurturing environment right here, right now. This realization was empowering and filled me with anticipation for the life we were about to welcome into the world. My name is Elizabeth, and from a very young age, I've always been deeply captivated by the mysteries of the natural world, a curiosity that often puzzled my family. While my sister Amanda was enchanted by dolls and fairy tale dreams of princesses, my adventures were in the backyard, gathering leaves, stones, and whatever small wonders I could place under the lens of a magnifying glass I had found in a cereal box. "Why do leaves change color and drop off, Mom?" I would ask, waving a brilliantly hued maple leaf I had discovered. My mom, preoccupied and sewing a dance costume for Amanda, would respond without looking up, "Ask your teacher, Elizabeth. I'm busy right now." This kind of reply was typical whenever I posed questions about nature or science. I recall a specific afternoon when I was 8. The kitchen table was a landscape of various household items I had assembled for experimentation. I was wholly absorbed in mixing baking soda with different liquids, entranced by the fizzing reactions, when my mom's exasperated voice broke my focus. "What on earth are you doing, Elizabeth? Look at this mess. Clean it up immediately. Your sister's friends are coming over for her birthday party, and I need the space." Amanda's birthday celebrations were always lavish productions, complete with entertainers, life-sized cartoon characters, and hordes of guests. My birthdays, by contrast, were modest gatherings with just my grandparents and a plain cake. The disparity between our parties was starkly evident. "Here's your birthday present, sweetheart," my dad would say, handing me a new volume of the science encyclopedia. Don't get me wrong, I cherish those books. But seeing Amanda unveil a pile of toys and gadgets at her parties made it painfully clear where the bulk of our parents' attention was directed. My saving grace was my grandparents, my father's parents. They provided a haven from the constant reminder that I was the outlier in our family. Every weekend and school holiday, they would welcome me into their home with loving enthusiasm. "Tell me more about what you've learned this week, little scientist," Grandpa would encourage, his eyes sparkling with sincere interest as I shared my latest discoveries. Amanda, on the other hand, had no interest in joining me. "They're so dull," she would complain. "Besides, Mom and Dad are taking me to the new theme park this weekend." I remember watching their car pull away, feeling a sting in my heart. "Why can't I go too?" I once asked. "Oh, honey," my mom replied, patting my head distractedly. "You wouldn't enjoy it. You'd probably want to study the mechanics of the rides instead of having fun." That was the prevailing theme. Amanda was the quintessential daughter, fitting seamlessly into their ideal, while I was the inquisitive one, favoring microscopes over makeup, always feeling slightly out of place. Everything began to shift when I entered middle school. Mrs. Johnson, my science teacher, was the first educator who seemed to recognize and nurture my potential. During a parent-teacher conference, she spoke to my parents with enthusiasm. "Mr. and Mrs. Martin, your daughter has extraordinary potential. I have never seen a student grasp complex scientific concepts so naturally. We need to discuss moving Elizabeth to our gifted program." I overheard my mom's lukewarm response through the classroom door. "That sounds rather complicated. She's doing fine where she is. Besides, we have to think about Amanda. It wouldn't be fair to give Elizabeth special treatment." My heart sank listening to their words. Yet, despite the familiar pattern of their responses, I clung to the belief that my path, though different and sometimes lonely, was mine to forge with passion and an unyielding curiosity about the world. The day after my parents rejected the opportunity for me to join the gifted program, Grandma took matters into her own hands. With the determination of a seasoned general, she marched into my school and straight into the principal's office. Her voice was steady and resolute as she declared, "My granddaughter will take those tests, and she will have every opportunity she deserves." I don't care what her parents said. "But, Mrs. Martin, we need parental consent," the principal protested. "I'll handle my son and his wife. You just make sure Elizabeth gets her chance," Grandma countered firmly. And she did just that. After a week of intense discussions and, I suspect, some financial persuasion from my grandparents, my parents reluctantly agreed to let me take the placement tests. I passed them all with flying colors, and suddenly, my world grew exponentially larger. The gifted program was a gateway to realms I had never imagined. International science competitions, academic Olympiads, and research seminars became part of my new reality. I immersed myself in this vibrant community, where for the first time, I found peers who shared my enthusiasm for discovery and innovation. I won my first international competition with a project on sustainable ecosystems, and more victories followed. Where should we put this one? Grandpa would ask each time I brought home a new trophy or certificate. In the box with the others, I'd respond, pulling out my special cardboard box from under the bed. I never displayed my awards, partly because I didn't want to boast, but mostly because I sensed that they made my parents uneasy. Amanda, my sister, had her views on my success. "Nobody likes a know-it-all," she'd sneer, but then she'd turn around and ask, "Hey, can you help me with my science homework? And maybe just do it for me?" "Amanda, that's cheating," I'd protest. "Elizabeth, help your sister right now," Mom would inevitably command. The family mantra was family helps family, so I would end up doing Amanda's work, feeling like a fraud, but too intimidated to defy my parents. It became a recurring pattern. Amanda demanded, my parents insisted, and I complied. I often overheard them discussing me when they thought I wasn't listening. Their whispered conversations floated up the stairs to where I sat with my chemistry set or the latest research paper I was studying. "I just don't understand where she gets it from," Mom would say, baffled. "No one in our family is like this. Maybe she was switched at birth," Dad would joke, a hint of seriousness lurking in his tone that stung more than outright mockery. One evening, after winning another science competition, I overheard Dad in his study talking to Amanda about her struggling grades. "It's not fair that she's so smart," Amanda whined. "Listen, sweetheart." Dad's voice softened. "The weak need to be supported. That's why we focus on you. Elizabeth, well, she'll be fine on her own." I leaned against the wall, tears welling up. They justified their neglect with twisted logic, as if being capable meant I didn't need love or support. At school, I was the odd girl who spent lunch breaks in the laboratory instead of the cafeteria. People would seek me out for help with their science homework, but genuine friendships were scarce. Through it all, Grandma and Grandpa were my pillars. They listened for hours as I explained my latest experiments or theories, never making me feel like an anomaly. "Look what I found for you," Grandpa would say, pulling out scientific journals or new equipment for my experiments. "I thought this might interest you," he'd add, his eyes twinkling with pride and encouragement. Their unwavering support and belief in me were the foundations on which I built my dreams and aspirations. Despite the steadfast support of my grandparents, the void left by my parents' lack of affection was profound and painful. Watching other families at school events, parents embracing their children, siblings cheering each other on, I felt an acute, relentless ache. Amidst these feelings, a transformative opportunity arose. I was graduating early at the age of 18, having fulfilled all my high school requirements, and I had been granted a full scholarship to one of the nation's top universities. Leaving for university was like taking a breath of fresh air for the first time. The campus buzzed with a vibrant intellectual energy, and for the first time, I did not feel out of place. In my advanced chemistry class, I met Sarah and Brian, who shared my passion for molecular structures. We quickly became friends, spending countless hours in the lab, our conversations filled with the kind of excitement over scientific discoveries that would bore most. Yet, even as I thrived academically and socially in this new environment, a part of me still longed for my family's acknowledgement. I would call home every week, hoping for a conversation that went beyond the usual disinterested responses. "Yes, Elizabeth, that's nice," my mom would say dismissively as I shared details of my research, quickly shifting the topic to Amanda's latest job at a high-end boutique downtown. It was during one of these routine calls in my second semester, while deeply immersed in a research project, that I sensed something was amiss at home. "With your father's condition worsening," I heard my mom say to my dad, likely thinking I was muted. "What about Grandpa?" I interrupted, my voice tense with concern. There was a pause, a silence too long to be innocent. "Oh, Elizabeth, I didn't realize you were still there. It's nothing serious, just a minor health issue." He's already recovering, she replied. I'm coming home, I stated firmly, already planning my journey back. No, don't be ridiculous. My mom's tone hardened. You need to focus on your studies. Amanda is helping them out. Everything's under control. Her reassurances did little to quell my worries. Despite her dismissal, I felt something was not right. After hanging up, I immediately called Grandma, whose voice sounded unusually distant. Oh yes, dear, Amanda's been such a help. She comes by often to check on your grandfather. Amanda, who had always claimed that visiting our grandparents was dull. It didn't add up. 3 weeks later, I stood at my grandparents' familiar front door, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. Instead of Grandma's warm greeting, I found Amanda blocking the doorway. What are you doing here? She asked, her expression feigning surprise. I came to see Grandpa and Grandma. How is he? No one's home, she replied hastily, too hastily. They're out. Grandpa's sick. Where would they go? I don't know. Elizabeth, just go away, she snapped, beginning to close the door. Wait, I protested, placing my foot in the doorway. Let me come in and wait for them. No one's home, she insisted, pushing the door against my foot. God, you're so annoying. Just leave. Confused and hurt, I tried calling Grandma again, but it went straight to voicemail, a rare occurrence, as she always kept her phone on for me. With no other options, I headed to my parents' house, seeking clarity and hoping for answers. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen as I walked in. When I arrived home unexpectedly, the first thing I noticed was the tension. What are you doing home? Dad asked, his voice tinged with annoyance he didn't bother to hide. I came to see Grandpa and Grandma, but they're not home. Amanda wouldn't let me in, I explained, feeling unsettled by the whole situation. Oh, honey, Mom interjected, sharing a significant look with Dad before continuing. We were going to tell you. Your grandparents are in a nursing home now. The room seemed to spin as I processed her words. What? Why didn't anyone tell me? It was a quick decision, Dad explained with a smoothness that felt rehearsed. They needed specialized care. It's better this way. Which nursing home? I want to visit them, I demanded, needing to see them for myself. They're under quarantine right now, Mom replied quickly. No visitors allowed. Maybe next time. Feeling uneasy, I eventually returned to university, but the doubt and worry haunted me. I couldn't shake off the image of Amanda's hostile face or the too smooth explanations from my parents. Everything felt wrong. That unsettling feeling intensified when I received an ominous call from Mom while in the lab one Tuesday morning. Elizabeth, she began, her voice unnaturally flat, your grandfather passed away last night. The test tube I was holding crashed to the floor, shattering under the weight of the news. What? No. When's the funeral? Thursday at 1 p.m. Don't be late, she instructed, her tone almost mechanical. I didn't even clean up the broken glass. I just left the lab, overwhelmed by grief and confusion. My grandfather, the man who had always believed in me, was gone without a final goodbye. Arriving at the church at 2:10 p.m. on Thursday, the empty parking lot was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. The echoing silence of the building filled me with dread. Inside, I found a custodian cleaning the floors. The Martin funeral? I asked, hope dwindling. That ended hours ago. They held it at 9 a.m., he informed me, looking up from his task. I felt a punch to the gut. Frantically, I called my parents. Oh, Elizabeth, Mom's voice dripped with feigned disappointment. You must have mixed up the times. We clearly said 9 a.m. No, I said firmly, my hand shaking as I clung to my phone. You said 1 p.m. I wrote it down. I know you said 1 p.m. Where's Grandma? I need to talk to her. Your grandmother is still in the nursing home, Dad interjected sharply. And she doesn't want to see you right now. She's very upset you missed the funeral. Despite telling my parents I was returning to university, I drove to my grandparents' house instead, desperate for answers. The familiar street looked unchanged. The old oak tree, the well-tended garden, Grandma's beloved wind chimes. Trembling, I rang the doorbell. After a tense moment, the door opened, and there stood Grandma, supposedly in a nursing home, and refusing to see me. "Grandma," I exclaimed, moving to embrace her, overwhelmed with relief at seeing her familiar face. But she stepped back, creating a distance that felt like miles. The coldness in Grandma's eyes halted me in my tracks. Her expression was stern, unrecognizable, nothing like the gentle, loving gaze I remembered from my childhood. "So now you decide to show up," she said, her voice icy and distant. "Grandma, what's going on?" "They told me you were in a nursing home," I stammered, confusion and hurt swirling within me. "Don't," she interrupted, raising her hand in a stopping motion that felt like a slap. "Your grandfather called you over and over. He was asking for you on his deathbed, wanting to say goodbye to his little scientist. But you couldn't be bothered to answer his calls or visit. How could you be so cruel, Elizabeth?" "Let me see the number he was calling," I managed to say, my voice shaking. "Please, Grandma, I need to understand." Grandma disappeared inside for a moment, and I came back holding a small notepad. Her hands trembled as she showed me a number written in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. "That's not my number," I whispered, the reality sinking in. "I've had the same number since high school." "They gave you a fake number? What do you mean?" Grandma's stern expression began to waver. "Your parents," she explained, her voice breaking, "said you changed it when you went to university. They told us you wanted to distance yourself from us." The pieces were starting to fall into place. "Grandma, I came here during the break. Amanda was here. She wouldn't let me in. She said no one was home. Then Mom and Dad told me you and Grandpa were in a nursing home." Grandma's face went pale. "Nursing home? We never. Amanda and your parents told us you were too busy with your university life to visit. They said you were ashamed of us, that we weren't sophisticated enough for you anymore." How could they? I felt my knees weaken under the weight of the deceit. "Grandma, they told me the funeral was at 1 p.m. today. When I got to the church, it was already over." "The funeral was at 9 a.m., Grandma said slowly, the realization dawning in her eyes. "Your parents stood there, telling everyone how ashamed they were that you couldn't make it. Amanda was crying, saying she tried so hard to reach you." Overcome with emotion, I fell into her arms, both of us dissolving into tears on the front porch. The grief, the confusion, and the manufactured distance that had been orchestrated between us poured out as we held each other. "He died thinking I abandoned him," I sobbed into her shoulder. "Grandpa died thinking I didn't care," I cried, my heart breaking. "Sure." Grandma stroked my hair like she used to when I was little, her tears mingling with mine. "We know the truth now, Elizabeth. We know." After we dried our tears, Grandma picked up the phone with a determined look. Her fingers trembled as she dialed, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Sarah, yes, it's me. I need you, Walter, and Amanda to come over right away. There are some important documents we need to discuss." "No, it can't wait. They'll be here in an hour," Grandma said after hanging up. I told them I had important documents to discuss. "The lawyer is on his way too." When the doorbell rang, Grandma squeezed my hand. "Stay in the kitchen until I call you." I heard them enter. Mom's practiced social laugh, Dad's formal greetings, Amanda's bored sighs. I waited, hidden yet listening, as the stage was set for a confrontation that would unravel the web of lies and bring the truth to light. Grandma's voice, sharp and commanding, filled the room. "Please, everyone, find a seat. Mr. Raymond is here to read Henry's will." That was my signal. I stepped into the living room just as the lawyer began unclasping his briefcase. The expressions around me were unforgettable. Mom's smile was fixed and unnatural, Dad's complexion paled, and Amanda's mouth dropped open in shock. Clearing his throat, Mr. Raymond began to read. "I, Henry Martin, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament." The room fell silent, punctuated only by the rustle of papers. Firstly, the house was left to Grandma, along with a significant amount of money for her upkeep. Then came the revelation that flushed Amanda's cheeks with rage. "To my granddaughter Elizabeth Martin, I leave my newly constructed laboratory facility, fully equipped and ready for her research. All necessary permits and paperwork are in order. I was astounded. Grandpa had built me a lab, my very own research facility. As for the remainder of my estate, Mr. Raymond continued, it is to be divided equally between my granddaughters, Elizabeth and Amanda Martin. Amanda's chair screeched against the floor as she stood up abruptly, but Grandma motioned for her to sit. There's more, Grandma interjected, holding a letter. Your grandfather had this letter to be read too. With authority in her voice, Grandma read, My dear family, I have observed over the years how favoritism has soured our bonds. To my son and daughter-in-law, your handling of your daughters has been disgraceful. Every child deserves equal love and support. Stop. Amanda burst out, rising again. This is absurd. Why should Elizabeth get anything? Do you know how much I had to endure, sitting with that tedious old man, pretending to care? Mom tried to silence her, but Amanda was relentless. You promised, she accused our parents. You said if I played nice, if I visited him and acted like the perfect granddaughter, it would all be mine. You had me grovel to a dying man. The stark reality of their scheming was now laid bare in its full, grim ugliness. And now what? Amanda's voice escalated. Little Miss Perfect gets a whole laboratory, and I get just half the money? No, give me the house. She doesn't need both. She can keep her precious lab. I remained silent, watching as my sister's facade crumbled, exposing a harsh truth beneath. Finally, Mom broke the tense silence. Elizabeth, you heard your sister. Be reasonable. Do you realize how much we've invested in your education? The science camps, the competitions? I nearly chuckled. You didn't pay for any of that. Grandma and Grandpa did. That's not the point, Mom snapped back. Family means making sacrifices. If you want to honor your grandfather's memory, you'll sign over your share to Amanda. She needs it more than you do. Grandma's voice sliced through the tension as she stood, holding Grandpa's letter. Let me remind you of what Henry thought about this family's sacrifice. She read on, revealing more about their blatant favoritism and how it resulted in emotional neglect towards me and turned Amanda into a spoiled individual. How dare you? Amanda screamed. No, how dare you? Grandma countered with unprecedented vigor. You manipulated and lied to a dying man, preventing his cherished granddaughter from bidding him farewell. And now you dare speak of family and sacrifice. Grandma moved with purpose to the door, flinging it open. Get out, all of you, she commanded, her voice resounding with a finality that marked a new beginning for us, away from the deceit and manipulations that had plagued our family. I still find it hard to believe that Grandpa Henry left anything to Amanda, considering her spoiled and selfish demeanor, a direct reflection of our parents' influence. The day they stormed out of our lives, slamming doors and hurling threats, the house was enveloped in an uncanny silence. That was 6 years ago. Today, I manage my research laboratory, the very one Grandpa had built for me. It's everything I ever hoped for, and then some. Often, during those late nights when I'm the last one there, I feel a sense of Grandpa's presence around me, his pride and love as tangible as if he were still here. Grandma visits frequently. Every Sunday, we have dinner together, and afterward, she insists on a tour of the lab to catch up on my latest projects. She even enrolled in a few science classes at the local community college to better grasp the technical aspects of my work. I think, more than anything, she wants to connect with the passion for discovery that Grandpa and I shared. As for my parents and Amanda, I haven't spoken to them since that fateful day. Occasionally, their emails appear in my inbox or their numbers flash on my caller ID, but I delete them unopened. They chose their path long ago, just as I have chosen mine. Recently, I stumbled upon an old photograph of Grandpa tucked inside one of his favorite books. It captured a moment in his garden. He was showing something to a younger version of myself, who was intensely examining it through a magnifying glass. On the back, he had written, "My little scientist will change the world someday." That photo now sits on my desk, a constant reminder of his belief in me. I've come to realize that family isn't solely defined by blood. The truest family members are those who believe in you, support your dreams, and love you, not despite your quirks and differences, but because of them. These are the bonds that matter most, the ones that truly shape who we become.
I should have known something was wrong when my sister showed up to my daughter's first birthday party wearing white. Not just any white, a flowing, ethereal dress that looked suspiciously like something you'd wear to announce a pregnancy. I just didn't expect her to actually do it right as I was about to help Lily blow out her candle. My name is Ruby, and I've spent 32 years being the responsible one. The good daughter, the one who always had her act together, while my younger sister Sarah careened from crisis to crisis, leaving our parents to clean up her messes. But that day, watching her steal my baby spotlight with practiced precision, something inside me finally snapped. "Everyone, I have amazing news!" Sarah's voice cut through the happy birthday song like a knife through butter. My hands froze on the cake knife as 20 pairs of eyes shifted from my beautiful daughter in her pink tutu to my beaming sister. "I'm pregnant!" The collective gasps and squeals were immediate. My mother burst into tears, rushing to embrace Sarah, while my father stood there grinning like he'd just won the lottery. I felt Harper, my best friend, squeeze my shoulder in silent support. "Mama!" Lily's tiny voice brought me back to reality. She sat in her high chair, confused by the sudden shift in attention, her chubby fingers reaching for the rainbow sprinkle cake we'd spent hours perfecting. "Just a minute, sweetie," I managed, forcing a smile. "Looks like Aunt Sarah has some big news." "Oh my God, this is just perfect timing," my mother gushed, still clutching Sarah. "Now the cousins will be so close in age." Sarah untangled herself from our mother's embrace and floated toward me, that familiar calculating look in her eyes that always preceded asking for something. "Actually, Ruby, I've been thinking..." "Here we go. You know how Chad and I are still trying to figure out our living situation?" She gestured vaguely toward her on-again, off-again boyfriend, who was busy stuffing his face with chips in the corner. "Well, your house has that beautiful nursery you designed for Lily." I gripped the cake knife tighter. "What about it?" "Well, Lily's getting bigger now, and you have that spare room upstairs that would make such a cute big girl room for her." Sarah's voice took on that wheedling tone I knew too well. "Maybe you could let me have the nursery. You can just build another one upstairs." The room went quiet, except for Lily's soft babbling. I could feel Harper tensing beside me, ready to jump in, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You want me to give you my nursery? The one I spent months designing and decorating for my daughter?" "Well, yeah," Sarah brightened, mistaking my tone for agreement. "It makes perfect sense. You're established. You're doing so well with your job, and I really need the help right now. Chad's between opportunities and..." "You mean he's unemployed again?" Harper muttered under her breath. "Ruby," my mother cut in, "your sister needs family support right now. You know how hard pregnancy can be, especially when you're..." She paused, glancing at Chad, dealing with various challenges. My father nodded sagely. "It would really help your sister out, Ruby. And you've always been so good at handling things." I looked around the room, at my parents' expectant faces, at Chad's disinterested slouch, at Sarah's practiced pout. Then I looked at my daughter, still waiting patiently for her cake, trusting that Mama would make everything right. Something shifted inside me. Years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always gave in. It all crystallized into a diamond-hard resolve. I smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Of course, Sarah. You can bring her things next weekend." Sarah squealed and hugged me, while our parents beamed with approval. Only Harper looked concerned, knowing me well enough to recognize the danger in my tone. "Now," I said, turning back to my daughter, "let's cut this cake, shall we?" As everyone gathered around to sing again, I caught Harper's questioning look. I gave her a slight nod, one that said, "Watch me. Just watch what happens next." Because what my dear family didn't know was that I'd finally learned something important. Sometimes being the responsible one means taking responsibility for your own happiness. And sometimes that means burning it all down. I helped Lily blow out her candle, already planning how to light a much bigger fire. "You're not seriously considering giving her the nursery, are you?" Harper set down her coffee mug with enough force to make the cafe table rattle. 3 days had passed since the birthday party disaster, and my best friend's patience was wearing thinner than mine. "Of course not," I replied, stirring my latte absently. "But you should have seen the texts I got this morning. Sarah's already picking out paint colors." Harper pulled out her phone. "Show me." I handed over mine, watching her scroll through the endless stream of messages from my sister. Pictures of cribs, wallpaper samples, and nursery themes flooded the screen, interspersed with comments like, "This is exactly what I want," and "We should start moving things out this weekend." "Jesus," Harper muttered. "She really thinks she's getting your house, doesn't she?" A memory flashed through my mind. Sarah, 16, taking my prom dress without asking because she needed it more for her junior formal. Me, standing in my closet, finding the dress returned with wine stains and a torn hem. "Remember when she worked for me?" I asked, watching a young mother at the next table trying to wrangle her toddler. 3 months at my company, and she nearly cost us our biggest client because she couldn't be bothered to show up on time. "And your parents said you were being too hard on her," Harper finished, "because she was going through a rough patch with what's his name?" "Dylan," I supplied. "Before Chad, after Trevor, but before Marcus." "The one you paid rent for?" "No, that was Josh. Dylan was the one I bailed out of jail after he got drunk and tried to steal a police horse." I laughed, but it came out hollow. God, I sound like a human ATM, don't I? Harper leaned forward. "Ruby, honey, you're not an ATM. You're a doormat, and I say that with love." My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Sarah's so excited about the nursery. We should all go shopping this weekend. Your father and I can help with the renovation costs for Lily's new room." I showed Harper the message. Her eyes narrowed. "They really think they can just redistribute your house?" "They've been redistributing my life since I was old enough to have something worth taking." The words came out sharper than I intended. When I got my first job at 16, guess who had to share her paychecks? When I got my college acceptance letters, guess who had to defer a year so Sarah could have her dream gap year in Europe? "Which she quit after 3 weeks, Harper added. "And who paid for the emergency flight home?" I raised my hand like a student answering a question. "This girl." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a real estate listing from Ivy, my agent. A beautiful 3-bedroom condo across town, newly renovated, with a view of the park. Harper peered at the screen. "What's that about?" I stood up, gathering my things. "That's my next appointment. Want to come see what karma looks like?" 20 minutes later, we stood in an empty living room flooded with natural light. Ivy, clipboard in hand, watched me run my fingers along the smooth quartz countertops in the kitchen. "The sellers are motivated," she said. "They'd consider a quick close if the offer's right." I walked to the smaller bedroom, already picturing Lily's toys scattered across the hardwood floors. It was smaller than her current nursery, but it had a window seat perfect for reading stories. "Ruby," Harper called from the master bedroom, "come look at this view." I joined her at the window, taking in the sprawling park below. No shared walls with entitled siblings, no space for family to crash indefinitely, just peace. What about your house? Harper asked quietly. I pulled out my phone, showing her the text I'd drafted to Ivy earlier. List it, price it to sell fast, and don't tell anyone in my family. Ivy appeared in the doorway, her professional mask cracking slightly to reveal a smile. Are we doing this? I thought about Sarah's white dress at the party, about my daughter's confused face when her special day was hijacked, about 32 years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the good daughter. It's go time, I whispered, hitting send on the text. Harper wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You know they're going to lose their minds, right? I watched a young couple playing with their dog in the park below, free and happy in their own space. Maybe it's time they learned what it feels like to lose something they thought they were entitled to. Shall I draw up the paperwork? Ivy asked. I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in years. Make it ironclad. No family discounts this time. The nursery looked different in the harsh light of my phone's camera. Each click captured another piece of evidence, proof that this room had been lovingly created for Lily, not commandeered as a gift for Sarah. Ivy had suggested documenting everything before the sale listing went live. And this is where the changing table used to be, I narrated quietly, panning across the mint green wall with its hand-painted butterflies, before I moved it to make room for the free sign I'm about to put on it. A soft knock at the door made me jump. Ruby? Honey? Are you home? My mother's voice. Of course. I quickly shut off the camera and shoved my phone in my pocket. Coming! I opened the front door to find both my parents standing there, matching concerned expressions on their faces. My father held a takeout bag from my favorite Thai place, their standard peace offering. We brought lunch, my mother said, already pushing past me into the house, and we wanted to talk about Sarah's nursery. I bit back a correction. Not Sarah's nursery, never Sarah's nursery. Instead, I smiled. Perfect timing. I was just organizing things upstairs. They followed me to the kitchen, where my mother immediately began unpacking containers of pad thai and green curry. My father settled into his usual chair, the one that would be gone in less than a week. So, my mother started, sliding a container toward me. Sarah's been showing me some lovely ideas for the room. She's thinking of a woodland theme, very gender-neutral, since they don't know what they're having yet. I stabbed a piece of chicken with my fork. That sounds nice. We know this is a big change, my father added, but your mother and I have been talking. We'd like to help with the renovation costs for Lily's new room. Make it really special for her. That's so generous, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. But actually, I've been thinking about Sarah's situation. My mother perked up. Oh? You're right. She needs support right now. And this house, well, it has so much space. Too much space, really, for just Lily and me. I watched their faces light up with approval and felt a twisted satisfaction. I've decided to make some changes to help accommodate everyone. Oh, Ruby! My mother reached across the table to squeeze my hand. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so practical. A thump from upstairs made us all look up. Lily, waking from her nap. I'll get her, I said quickly, but my mother was already standing. Let me. I want to see my grandbaby. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, counting the seconds until she'd reached the nursery. The nursery where half the furniture was already gone, carefully documented and stored in a rental unit across town. The realtor thinks it'll sell within days, I whispered to myself. What was that, honey? My father asked. Nothing. Just thinking out loud about paint samples. My mother's voice drifted down from upstairs. Ruby, where's the rocking chair? Oh, I moved it, I called back, making space for Sarah's things. I heard Lily's happy babbling as my mother brought her downstairs. My daughter took one look at me and announced, Bye-bye house? My heart stopped. What does she mean, bye-bye house? My mother asked, settling Lily into her high chair. I forced a laugh. Oh, you know toddlers. She's been saying that to everything lately. Bye-bye spoon, bye-bye cup. It's her new favorite phrase. My father chuckled, but my mother's eyes narrowed slightly. I busied myself wiping invisible crumbs from the counter. When did you say Sarah could start moving things in? She asked. Next weekend, I replied smoothly. I thought we could make a day of it. Get everyone to help. That's wonderful. My mother's suspicion evaporated. I'll call Sarah right now. She'll be so excited. As she stepped into the living room to make the call, my father leaned in close. You're doing the right thing, Ruby. Family has to stick together. I nodded, thinking of the offer Ivy had texted me this morning. 30,000 over asking price, cash buyers, willing to close in 10 days. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Ivy again. Offer accepted? I glanced at my parents, my mother gushing into her phone, my father contentedly eating his lunch, both so certain of their right to redistribute my life. Both so sure I would never say no. Take it, I typed back. Lily caught my eye from her high chair and grinned. Bye-bye house, she said again, waving her little hand. I smiled back, my heart racing with equal parts guilt and liberation. That's right, baby girl, I whispered. Bye-bye house, and bye-bye to a whole lot more. You're evil, Harper laughed, slapping another Sarah's Things label on an empty box. Pure evil. I love it. We'd spent the afternoon filling boxes with old newspapers, making them look convincingly heavy. Each one was carefully labelled. Sarah's books, Sarah's winter clothes, Sarah's kitchen stuff. The moving company would be here tomorrow to take my actual belongings to the new condo, but these decoy boxes would stay, completing the illusion that I was making space for my sister. The best part, I said, taping up another box. Sarah texted asking if she could store some things here early. I told her there was plenty of room. Does she have any actual things to store? Nope. But she'll show up with Chad's gaming console and 3 trash bags of laundry, just like last time. Harper snorted. How many times has she temporarily moved in with you? 4. I checked my phone. No, 5. I forgot about the time she got kicked out of that yoga instructor's apartment. The one she was dating while still living with Marcus? That's the one. Lily toddled past us, dragging her favourite stuffed elephant. Bye-bye, house, she called out cheerfully. Harper and I froze. Ruby? My mother's voice came from the front door. Ruby, are you home? Quick, I hissed, shoving the empty boxes behind the couch. Act natural. My mother appeared in the doorway, just as Harper sprawled dramatically across the floor, pretending to play with Lily. Oh, look who's here, my mother cooed at Lily, who immediately ran to her grandmother. And Harper, too. Are you helping Ruby organize? You know me, Harper replied smoothly. Always happy to help with family stuff. My mother's eyes swept the room, taking in the stack of labeled boxes. Oh, good. You're making space for Sarah. She's so excited about moving in. She's already ordered a crib. I felt my eye twitch. She ordered a crib? Yes. It's being delivered next week. I hope that's okay. She used your address since she's staying with Chad right now, and his place is... She wrinkled her nose. Not exactly delivery-friendly. Perfect, I said through gritted teeth. Just perfect. Bye-bye, house, Lily announced again. My mother frowned. She's still saying that. Ruby, do you think she's picking up on some anxiety about the changes? Maybe we should have a family meeting to discuss the transition. No! Harper and I said simultaneously. I mean, I recovered quickly. There's no need. Everything's under control. We're all very excited about Sarah moving in. Right, Harper? Harper's smile could have cracked glass. So excited. Well, I just stopped by to drop off these paint samples Sarah picked out. My mother placed a fan of color swatches on the coffee table. She's thinking mint green might be too basic. She was thinking more of a royal purple. I thought about the mint green walls I'd spent weeks perfecting, the ones currently being photographed for the listing. How unique. Bye-bye, house, Lily said again, pointing at the window where, thankfully, the for sale sign hadn't been installed yet. My mother gathered her purse. I should go. Your father's making dinner tonight, but Sarah might stop by later to measure the windows for curtains. After she left, Harper and I collapsed onto the couch. That was close, she breathed. But Ruby, you have to do something about Lily's new catchphrase before she blows your cover. I know. I picked up my daughter, who immediately started playing with my hair. But she's not wrong. We are saying bye-bye to the house and to the family's endless expectations. My phone buzzed, a text from Ivy. Sign installation tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. You ready for this? Harper asked softly. Once that sign goes up, there's no going back. I looked around at the staged boxes, the paint samples, the space that had never really been mine because my family had always felt entitled to it. Then I looked at my daughter, innocent and happy, unaware that her mother was about to burn every bridge we'd ever crossed. You know what the worst part is? I said, bouncing Lily on my knee. They're so convinced I'll never say no that they're not even bothering to ask permission anymore. They're just taking. Not for much longer, Harper reminded me. My phone buzzed again. Sarah this time. Found the perfect chandelier for my nursery. Ordering it now. You don't mind if they deliver it there next week, right? Love you. I showed Harper the text. She raised an eyebrow. Want me to help you stack more empty boxes? Yes, I said, setting Lily down. And then we're going to practice saying a new phrase. Right, baby girl? Lily looked up at me with her big brown eyes. Bye-bye, house? No, sweetie. This time we're saying bye-bye, Sarah. I watched through my living room window as Sarah's rented U-Haul truck pulled into my driveway. Right on schedule. My sister sat in the passenger seat, one hand resting on her barely visible baby bump, while Chad attempted a three-point turn that nearly took out my mailbox. My parents' car pulled in right behind them. Ready? Harper whispered from beside me. She'd insisted on being here for moral support, though I suspected it was more for the entertainment value. Almost. I checked my phone. The movers had finished clearing out my actual belongings hours ago. The new condo was ready. Lily was safely at daycare. Everything was in place. Just waiting for the perfect moment. Outside, Sarah hopped down from the truck, her face lighting up at the sight of the nursery furniture I'd carefully arranged on the curb with a large, "Free" sign. My mother was already heading for the front door, keyring in hand, the key I'd conveniently forgotten to ask her to return months ago. The doorbell rang. Places, I muttered to Harper, who retreated to the kitchen with her phone ready to record. I opened the door to find my entire family on the porch, beaming like they'd just won a prize. We're here, Sarah announced, pushing past me into the house. Chad, grab those boxes by the door. They're labeled for the nursery. Mom, did you bring the paint samples? And Ruby, we need to talk about that chandelier delivery. She stopped dead in her tracks. The entrance hall was completely empty. No boxes, no furniture, no pictures on the walls. Ruby? My mother's voice wavered. What's going on? I smiled sweetly. Oh, did I forget to mention? The house has been sold. The silence that followed was deafening. What? Sarah's voice came out as a squeak. The house is sold. I pointed to the massive for sale sign in the front yard, now sporting a bright red sold sticker across it. Closing is next week, but... Sarah's face went from confusion to rage in record time. You can't sell the house. What about the nursery? What about my baby? Your baby? I laughed. You mean the baby you're having with your unemployed boyfriend, for whom you expected me to give up my daughter's nursery? That baby? Ruby, my father stepped forward, using his reasonable voice. Let's talk about this. You can't just make decisions like this without consulting the family. Actually, I can. It's my house, my name on the deed, my mortgage payments, my decision. Sarah burst into tears, the dramatic, wailing kind she'd perfected since childhood. How could you do this to me? I'm pregnant. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. I gestured to the furniture on the curb. But feel free to take the nursery set. Consider it my baby shower gift. My mother grabbed my arm. Ruby, stop this nonsense right now. You're being cruel. Cruel? I pulled away from her grip. Cruel is hijacking my daughter's first birthday party to announce a pregnancy. Cruel is assuming you can just take over my home because Sarah needs another handout. Cruel is never, ever asking what I want or need because you're all too busy taking. But we're family, Sarah sobbed. No, I said quietly. We're not. We're just people who share DNA and a long history of me giving while you take. Chad, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. So we drove this U-Haul out here for nothing. Not nothing, Harper called from the kitchen doorway, phone still recording. There's some lovely free furniture on the curb. Better hurry though, I posted it on Facebook Marketplace an hour ago. As if on cue, a car pulled up to the curb, and a young couple started loading the changing table into their SUV. This isn't over, Sarah hissed, mascara running down her face. You'll regret this. I doubt it. I opened the front door wider. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to finish packing. The new owners want to do a final walkthrough tomorrow. Ruby, please. My mother tried one last time. We can work this out. I thought about all the times I'd given in to that plea. All the times I'd sacrificed my own needs to work things out for Sarah. Not anymore. The house was mine, I said calmly. I sold it. Have a nice move. I closed the door on their shocked faces, listening to Sarah's wails turn to angry screams outside. Through the window, I watched as another car pulled up for the free furniture, while my family stood frozen in disbelief. Harper stopped recording and gave me a high five. That was beautiful. It's not over, I said, hearing Sarah kick the U-Haul's tire in frustration. They'll be back. Let them come. Harper grinned. We've got it all on video. Outside, the sold sign gleamed in the afternoon sun, a beacon of my liberation. And somewhere across town, in a peaceful condo overlooking a park, my daughter's new room was waiting, free of family drama, free of manipulation, and most importantly, free of Sarah. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing for 3 days. I scrolled through the messages while Lily napped in her new room, the afternoon sun streaming through the Parkview windows. You've reached a new low, read my aunt's text. Your poor sister is devastated. How could you do this to your family? Demanded my cousin. Your father is heartbroken, my mother wrote. He had to take a day off work. The voicemails were worse. Ruby, it's Mum again. Sarah's been throwing up from stress. If anything happens to this baby, it's on you. Call me back. Hey sis, it's me. My lawyer says what you did could be considered emotional distress. Just letting you know. Harper sat across from me at my new kitchen island, reading the messages over my shoulder. Your sister has a lawyer now. She dated one for 2 weeks last year. He gave her his card when she keyed his car. Of course he did. Harper grabbed my phone. That's it. We're blocking them all. Wait. I reached for the phone, but Harper held it away. No waiting. Look at you. You haven't slept properly since the move. You jump every time your phone buzzes. This isn't healthy. She was right. I'd spent 3 nights lying awake, replaying the looks on their faces when they saw the sold sign. The way Sarah's voice cracked when she realized I wasn't joking. My father's disappointed headshake. I swallowed hard. Part of me still wants them to understand, to finally see things from my perspective. They won't, Harper said gently. They've had 32 years to see your perspective. They're not going to start now. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah posting on Facebook. Some people think money and success give them the right to destroy families. Karma will come for those who hurt pregnant women. You're toxic, betrayed, your family trauma. The comments flooded in immediately. Stay strong, girl. Some sisters are just jealous of new babies. Can't believe anyone would do this to their pregnant sister. Harper made a disgusted noise. Oh, that's rich coming from the woman who announced her pregnancy at her niece's first birthday party. A knock at the door made us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw Chad shifting awkwardly in the hallway. Should I call security? Harper whispered. I shook my head and opened the door. What do you want, Chad? He looked worse than usual, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt with what looked like yesterday's pizza stains. She's staying at my place and losing her mind. You broke her, Ruby. I broke her? I laughed incredulously. She tried to take my house. Look, I get it wasn't cool how she asked, but... Asked? I cut him off. She didn't ask. She announced it at my daughter's birthday party and expected me to just hand over my home, just like she's expected me to hand over everything else her entire life. Chad ran a hand through his greasy hair. She's pregnant, man, with my kid. We need help. Then help her yourself. Get a job. Be an actual partner instead of another problem for her to dump on me. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I stepped into the hallway, closing the door so Lily wouldn't wake up. For years, I've watched Sarah bounce between guys like you, men who think their problems are everyone else's responsibility. And every time she crashes and burns, guess who has to clean up the mess? Not anymore. She's your sister, and I'm done being her safety net. I pulled out my phone, showing him Sarah's Facebook post. Tell her if she wants to talk about karma, she should remember every rent check I covered, every crisis I solved, every time I put her first. Then she can talk about karma. Chad's face hardened. Sarah's right. You're just jealous because she's having a baby and you're alone. I laughed so hard I had to lean against the wall. I have a beautiful daughter, a successful career, and now, a peaceful home where no one can guilt me into fixing their lives. Trust me, I'm not jealous. He opened his mouth to argue, but Harper appeared in the doorway. I believe my friend asked you to leave. After he skulked away, Harper handed me back my phone. Ready to block them now? I looked at the screen. 3 more missed calls from my mother, 2 texts from Sarah, and a group chat message from my father asking the extended family to pray for Ruby's heart to soften. Do it, I said. Block them all. As Harper systematically blocked every family contact, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Through the window, I could see the park where I'd take Lily to play later. No drama, no guilt, no manipulation. There, Harper announced, handing back my phone. Now it's just you, me, and that bottle of wine I brought to celebrate your freedom. From the bedroom, I heard Lily stirring from her nap. Make that you, me, Lily, and wine. Perfect combination, Harper smiled. The only family you need. I can't believe I let you talk me into this, I muttered to Harper as we sat in the neutral territory of her apartment, waiting for Sarah to arrive. 2 weeks had passed since the moving day showdown, and my sister had finally agreed to meet, but only with Harper mediating. She needs to hear it, Harper said, arranging coffee cups on the table. And you need to say it. All of it. The doorbell rang exactly on time. A first for Sarah, who'd never been punctual in her life. When Harper opened the door, my sister walked in, looking like she'd dressed for a funeral. Black maternity dress, dark circles under her eyes, one hand protectively over her barely showing stomach. Ruby. Her voice was cold. Sarah. Mine was colder. Harper gestured to the couch. Let's all sit down. Coffee? Tea? I can't have caffeine, Sarah sniffed. Because of the baby. Not that some people care about that. Water it is, Harper said cheerfully, though I caught her eye roll. We sat in awkward silence until Harper cleared her throat. Sarah, you wanted to talk. So talk. Sarah's lower lip trembled. I just want to understand how you could be so evil. Taking away my baby's future home? Your baby's future home? I interrupted. You mean my house? The one I bought? The one I've been paying for? We're family! Sarah's voice rose. Family helps each other. Like you helped me when Lily was born? I leaned forward. Oh, wait, you didn't. You were too busy backpacking through Thailand with... what's his name? That's not fair. I was finding myself. While I was changing diapers and working 60-hour weeks. Alone. Sarah's face crumpled. I'm trying to do better now. I want to be a good mum, like you. I thought you'd help me. By giving you my house? By sharing! By being a sister! Tears spilled down her cheeks. But you're just selfish and bitter and... Selfish! I stood up so fast my coffee cup rattled. Let's talk about selfish, Sarah. Let's talk about the time you maxed out my credit card buying festival tickets. Or when you borrowed my car and got 3 parking tickets you never paid. Or how about when you got fired from the job I got you, because you were too hungover to show up. I was going through things. You're always going through things, and I'm always expected to fix them. I was shouting now, years of suppressed rage finally breaking free. Do you know what it's like to be the responsible one? To watch your sister wreck everything she touches while everyone expects you to clean up the mess? That's not... When was the last time you asked about my life? About Lily? When was the last time you showed up for anyone but yourself? Sarah stood too, mascara running down her face. You think you're so perfect. Miss Independent with her perfect job and perfect house and perfect life? Well, guess what? Some of us struggle. Some of us need help. Help is one thing. Entitlement is another. I took a deep breath. I finally realized something, Sarah. None of you ever loved me unconditionally. You only loved what I could give. The room went silent, except for Sarah's ragged breathing. That's not true, she whispered. No? Then name one time, just one, when you put my needs before yours. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hand drifted to her stomach again, a gesture that once would have made me cave, would have sent me rushing to fix everything. Not anymore. I have something now that I own completely, I said quietly. Peace, and I won't let you take that too. So that's it? Sarah's voice cracked. You're just done with me? With all of us? I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being the responsible one who has to sacrifice everything. I'm done watching you take and take and take. Harper, who'd been silent throughout our exchange, finally spoke. Sarah, I think it's time for you to go. My sister gathered her purse with shaking hands. At the door she turned back. You'll regret this, when my baby's born and you're not in their life. No, I cut her off. You'll regret this, when your baby's born and you finally understand what it means to be responsible for someone else's happiness, when you realize that burning bridges has consequences. She stared at me for a long moment, then left without another word. Through the window, I watched her walk to her car alone, probably for the first time in her life. Harper touched my shoulder. You okay? I wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling. No, but I will be. Want to go get Lily from daycare and take her to the park? I nodded, thinking of my daughter's innocent smile, her unconditional love. Yeah, let's go home. Because that's what I had now. Not just a house, but a real home. One built on my terms, free from the weight of toxic family obligations. Hiya, Mama! Lily squealed as I pushed her on the park swing. The autumn breeze carried the sound of her laughter across the playground, mixing with the rustle of falling leaves. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably another blocked message from my family. They'd taken to creating new accounts just to tell me how cruel I was. I'd gotten good at blocking those too. Ruby? A familiar voice made me turn. Sarah stood at the edge of the playground, her pregnancy now clearly visible under a loose sweater. She looked different, tired, but somehow more real than I'd ever seen her. I slowed Lily's swing. What are you doing here? I live nearby now, actually. She gestured to a small apartment building across from the park. Chad and I broke up. I got a job at the coffee shop downstairs. That explained why she looked different. She was wearing a barista's apron instead of her usual designer clothes. You're working? I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. Yeah. She smiled weakly. Turns out when you can't rely on someone else to fix everything, you have to fix it yourself. Lily pointed at Sarah's belly. Baby? That's right, sweetie, Sarah said softly. Your cousin's in there. I helped Lily out of the swing. Why are you here, Sarah? I had my first ultrasound yesterday. She pulled a grainy black and white photo from her apron pocket. It's a girl, and it made me think about Mum, about how she always played us against each other, about how I let her do it because it was easier than growing up. I sat on the empty swing, pushing myself slightly with one foot while Lily played in the sand nearby. Did Mom send you? No, she doesn't know I'm here. She's still... Sarah sighed. She's still Mom, but I'm trying not to be... well, me. What does that mean? It means I'm sorry. The words came out in a rush. Not just for the house thing, for everything. For being the hurricane that blew through your life expecting you to rebuild everything I destroyed. I studied her face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown so used to seeing. Instead, I found something new, accountability. The thing is, she continued, when Chad left and Mum started talking about me moving back home, I realized I was about to do to my daughter what Mom did to us, make her part of this cycle of dependency, of never growing up. So you got a job instead, and an apartment. It's tiny, and the elevator doesn't work, and I have to make coffee for rude people at 6 a.m., but... She straightened her apron. It's mine. I did it myself. Lily ran over with a handful of sand, proudly showing it to both of us before letting it slip through her fingers. I'm not asking for anything, Sarah said quickly. I want my daughter to know her cousin, to know what strength looks like. Because that's what you are, Ruby. Strong. Not cruel like Mom says. Strong. I watched Lily playing, thinking about all the times I'd wished for this, for Sarah to finally see me. Really see me. There's a coffee shop near my condo too, I said finally. Are they treating you better at yours? Sarah laughed. A real laugh, not her usual practiced giggle. The tips are decent, and my manager says I'm getting better at not burning the lattes. Lily and I usually get hot chocolate there on Sunday mornings, around 9. She caught her breath. Yeah? Yeah. And sometimes we feed the ducks after, when we're not too busy. I'd like that. She wiped her eyes. God, these pregnancy hormones are killer. Tell me about it. I cried at a paper towel commercial when I was pregnant with Lily. We shared a smile, small, tentative but real. I should get back to work, Sarah said, adjusting her apron. But... Sunday? I nodded. Sunday. As she walked away, Lily waved. Bye-bye, baby. You know what, sweetie? I scooped her up, breathing in her baby shampoo smell. I think we just said hello instead. That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed in our cozy condo, I thought about karma. Everyone had expected it to look like revenge, like my family getting what they deserved. Instead, it looked like Sarah in an apron, learning to stand on her own. Like me, learning to set boundaries without burning every bridge. Sometimes karma isn't about monsters getting punished. Sometimes it's about people finally facing themselves in the mirror. I kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, "Sweet dreams, baby girl." Because that's what I'd really bought when I sold that house. Not just peace, but the chance for a new story. One where strength didn't mean carrying everyone else's burdens, and family didn't mean sacrificing yourself. One where bye-bye house meant hello to something better.